Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello everyone from the city of Riyadh. CITC welcomes you to Fostering New Generation of Wi-Fi Technologies in Saudi Arabia webinar. CITC is working to transform Saudi Arabia into a digital society by enabling an array of different wireless technologies that can utilize spectrum while coexisting with other users and uses. CITC has just released Saudi Arabia's Spectrum Outlook for commercial and innovative use, with more than 23 gigahertz for commercial and innovative use, including more than 6 gigahertz of license-exempt spectrum. The new allocation of license-exempt use will enable the new generation Wi-Fi 6E in the kingdom and other uses and cases in the kingdom, which includes smart homes, virtual reality, and augmented reality. By this decision, the kingdom provides license-exempt spectrum more than any country in Middle East, Europe, and Africa. By this decision, the kingdom provides license-exempt spectrum more than any country in Middle East and Europe and Africa. Let us start with an overview of CITC's Spectrum Outlook for commercial and innovative use with Mr. Abdelhadi Al-Harthi from CITC.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, around the globe, wherever you are. Welcome to the CITC Fostering Commercial and Innovative Use of Wi-Fi Technology. So today I'm going to present Spectrum Outlook 2021-2023. So we'll start the first slide talking about the background before we came to the launching the outlook of the CITC on the spectrum. It was started back in early 2020, where we have finalized the national spectrum strategy, where it has different pillars. One of the main pillars of this strategy is to one of the main pillars is to allow spectrum for innovative and commercial use that can be used for different kind of sectors and different kind of services. After that, CITC has published a consultation in July 2020 requesting different verticals, individuals, government entities to participate in the consultation and provide their feedback on the spectrum innovative and commercial use. Then after that, there was a draft issued for the outlook, and that draft was having initial dimensions, directions in the technologies and services that are going to be used for the commercial and innovative use in the spectrum, in which CITC have analyzed multiple responses received from these agencies. More than 66 responses was analyzed and was reviewed before to issue that draft. After receiving responses from different parties participating in the draft review, then CITC did a depth summary on the consultation responses and analyzed all of them and come up with publishing the outlook of radio spectrum 2021-2023 for innovative and commercial use, which was published early this week, exactly in March 13th. So I will give a light here about the different categories that is going to be included in the outlook. We have a licensed spectrum that will enable around 4 gigahertz to be allocated for different kind of services and usage. Also, there will be another category for license-exempt spectrum, where CITC will enable more than 6 gigahertz for exempt use that can be enable different kind of technologies. The last category is going to be allocated related to the lightly licensed spectrum, where CITC going to allocate around 13 gigahertz of radio spectrum. So in total, if you can see this slide, there will be around 23 gigahertz of newly available spectrum for commercial use in the kingdom that will foster innovative and commercial use in Saudi Arabia and will enable different technology and different services. Here we are going to show you how we are going to handle this in the coming future. So between the licensed and the licensed exempt and the lightly licensed spectrum, we are going to update the regulations. We are going to make a full review on them. Where the regulations need to be updated, it is going to be updated, and some of new regulations are going to be published. And also we are going to targeting different spectrum bands. We start from licensed spectrum, where we will allocate new spectrums for within 600 megahertz and within C-band, within 26 gigahertz as well. For the license exempts, we are going to allocate a lot of spectrum in the 6 gigahertz, as well in the 66 gigahertz, and in the 5.9 for the VTX. For the lightly exempt, for the lightly licensed spectrum, we are going to allocate different frequency bands within the 10 gigahertz, 28 gigahertz, and finally within the 71 gigahertz. We will enable within the Outlook multiple use cases for different users and different kind of technologies. So we start from the mobile IMT technologies, where more bands are going to be allocated. That would help and booster the 5G services for sure at the end. Also, we are going to allocate more bands to the IoT technology, WLAN for the new radio as well, satellite technologies, mission critical and innovative use like the V2X and also the high amplitude platforms. So we are going to have a different kind of access regimes to these different technologies. We are going to allocate different frequency band within the low band, the mid band, and also the high band of frequency. For the roadmap related to the license spectrum, we are going to we have already started the consultation in the first half of this year, and the legal framework will be published within the second half of this year. So as you can see in the slide, different frequency bands we are going to work on, and we will be having an auction within this year for the 600 megahertz, which will be allocated from the media to the IMT. Also, we are going to have different frequency band within the 700 megahertz, also in the C-band for the 3,800 and 4,000 megahertz. These different bands, along with the frequency band within the 2.1 gigahertz, there will be an auction within this year, and they will be available for the use by this year, end of this year, or the first half of the second year. The other frequency band we are going to target is the 1.5 gigahertz along with the 26. We are going to have a consultation on this frequency band within the first half of the next year, and then we'll do an auction in the second half and make them available within early 2023. For the license exempt spectrum, CITC has gone through a deep process of analyzing the license exempt band, and that's revealed to allocate a big portion of the 6 gigahertz to the license exempt. So we have enabled the 6 gigahertz full band for the license exempts that will serve for the Wi-Fi 6E technology. So we will have 1,200 megahertz will be allocated for the Wi-Fi 6E. By achieving that, Saudi Arabia will be a leader in the world for this license assignment, in that we will be the first in the Middle East, Europe, and Africa to assign these frequencies to the license-exempt services. That will foster a lot of applications, starting from the smart home, augmented reality, virtual reality, a lot of other kind of services that can be enabled by this assignment. Along with that, CITC as well have another initiative for deployment of more than 60,000 access points within the country that will be open for use by the public on the Wi-Fi service. And enabling these frequencies to the Wi-Fi will allow these access points to use a lot of frequency band that will provide more better user experience and better latency to the services. In addition to the 6 gigahertz, we are going also to have a consultation on the 66 gigahertz that will foster and enable different kind of technologies like the telegraph, also augmented and virtual realities. Along with that as well, the 5.9 gigahertz, in which we will do a consultation on that frequency band for the V2X services, which is vehicle to X, like vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, etc. That will be in the first half of the next year, and a policy will be issued by the second half of the next year, where the frequencies will be available by early 2023. For the lightly licensed spectrum, we are targeting different frequency bands as well, starting from the C band in the 4,000 megahertz to 4,200 megahertz, along with the 28 gigahertz and 10 gigahertz and 70 gigahertz. We are going to go through a consultation by the second half of 2021, after which it will followed by implementing the regime that we are going to develop for the lightly licensed exempt by the first half of the next year. And after that, these frequency bands going to be available by the second half of 2022. So for the lightly licensed spectrum bands, we are targeting different use cases, different users. So going from hubs, BSMEs, and Wi-Fi as well, 5G small cell, different verticals, fixed wireless access as well, 5G small cells, and point to multi-point. So these are going to serve different kind of service providers, different kind of verticals, in order to use these frequency bands on the light regime system that will allow sharing of the spectrum, will allow utilizing the spectrum in more efficient way between different kind of users. So they can share the spectrum within different time intervals or within different regional locations. Thank you. This is concluding the presentation, and thanks for your listening. Welcome again. At this portion of the presentation, we are going to talk about the showcase that we have been implemented here, in Saudi Arabia for a trial of the Wi-Fi 6E. As I mentioned in my previous session, we are, by this license, exempt frequencies that we have assigned to the Wi-Fi use cases, that this will allow the country to be a leader among other countries. So we'll be the first in the Middle East, among Europe as well, Africa, to allow the complete 6 gigahertz to be licensed exempt category. So what we have done in this, we have engaged with our partners in the Wireless Broadband Alliance, along with Intel and Broadcom companies, where we have established a communication roadmap and agreement about how to bring this to Saudi Arabia. So we started this project by early this year, where we start to look for all of kind of arrangement, logistics needed in order to make this trial happen here in the country. So we started to see all of kind of logistics that we need to take place, the project coordination, and etc. So we have received also the pilot kits from Broadcom. This is a Wi-Fi, as you can see here, a Wi-Fi access point that supports 6E generation of the Wi-Fi that will enable high throughput speed, along with another PC or laptop that enabled with a Wi-Fi card supporting 6E generation. So using the regular or legacy Wi-Fi technology, as you can see, we have achieved a speed of 115 in the downlink speed, where it is very low speed, you can say, using the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi technology. And after that, after we implement the trial to the same device, that we have achieved 2.4 gigahertz of throughput. So this is a huge difference and a big step that's boosting the service to enable different kind of use cases and technologies. So I will allow the floor now to our partners to talk more about the gears that we have used in this trial and shed more details about some commercial aspects. So we start with Mr. Tiago from WBA. So Mr. Tiago, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abdullah Al-Arti. Hello, everyone. My name is Tiago Rodrigues. I'm the CEO of the Wireless Broadband Alliance. It's with great pleasure that I want to thank you, CITC, from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for this wonderful collaboration to be able to do this showcase of such an innovative technology that we have now available in the Saudi Arabia to be showed. At the same time, a big thank you for the kind invitation for this webinar. I think it's very useful to show the readiness and all the work that was developed in this showcase. I want just to give a brief explanation about this partnership and the objectives of this demonstration of Wi-Fi 6E. So WBA is a global non-profit trade association. We have a series of members from all over the world, and our goal is to improve the Wi-Fi as a technology. And for that, we participate in many consultations from policy makers, regulators, governments across the world. And of course, we participate in the consultation of CITC. And we got involved and in contact with CITC, and we discussed the opportunity to develop a showcase of Wi-Fi 6E in the kingdom. We talked with our members and under the leadership of Broadcom and Intel, come up the opportunity to develop this showcase. The idea of this showcase is to show the wonderful capabilities that Mr. Abdulladi already shared in terms of multi-gigabit speeds, but as well to show that this technology is ready. So already exist devices, both smartphones and laptops available today. So we can improve broadband connectivity, and in the case of the Kingdom of Saudi, continue with that digital agenda strategy for the kingdom. But let me now pause for now, and I would like to invite my colleagues, Buran from Broadcom and Carlos from Intel, to share with you exactly what was done on the trial and as well the readiness of this technology in terms of equipment.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Tiago, for your brief. So we'll go to Mr. Burhan in order to talk from Broadcom, to talk about the access point, that support Wi-Fi 6E's generation. So, Mr. Burhan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Abdul Hadi. Thank you, Tiago. Hi, everyone. I'm Burhan Masood with Broadcom Corporation. We provide silicon solution that are used in OEM equipment for access points and other Wi-Fi access hardware, as well as the client devices that are typically used in handset devices. The technology we are talking about today here is Wi-Fi, specifically the 6 gigahertz operation that we've enabled. The goal was here to help CITC with forming their rules for the 6 gigahertz spectrum consultation. The specific device we used for this purpose was the Broadcom 43684 access point device. This is a tri-band chip. It enables, along with 6 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and 2.4 gigahertz, as you would expect from a Wi-Fi device supporting all three bands going forward. This device supports channels up to 160 megahertz. It's been available since early part of last year. In fact, it's been used in the Wi-Fi 6E test bed as well. And it's been used by Broadcom customer or OEM partners in several products, some of which have been announced, and others are will be rolled out to market in due time. With that, I will talk a little bit more about the specific benefits of the technology that the BCM 43684 access point device enables. It is capable of communicating over the entire 1200 megahertz in the 6 gigahertz band, starting from 5925 all the way up to 7125 megahertz. With the 160 megahertz channels, it can enable a PHY rate of 2.4 gigabits per second. For that, this device actually specifically has capable of supporting 4 streams, but with most typical clients right now that are enabled are 2 stream. So with 2 streams, it can support up to 2.4 gigabits per second. The benefits of the 6 gigahertz band includes, along with the high throughput, the lower latency, and the added benefit of the greenfield nature of the 6 gigahertz band is the low jitter in latency, along with other protocol improvements that actually help lower the latency with the 6 gigahertz band, compared to some of the legacy capabilities within 5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. We are, as members of Broadcom, as member of Wireless Broadband Alliance, we are proponents of the harmonized spectrum regulation with the 1200 megahertz band, all available within the 6 gigahertz band, as it actually helps with faster time to market of the products, as well as leveraging the economies of scale to lower the product cost. And of course, as it goes with Wi-Fi, the ubiquitous nature applies to 6 gigahertz band also, meaning there's no special knowledge really required to use Wi-Fi in products that enable this. So with that, I'll briefly talk about the 3 experiments that hopefully we'll have enough time to cover all 3. One is we will establish the link between the Broadcom access point and the Intel client that we will shortly hear about from my colleague Carlos Acquire from Intel, and demonstrate the 2.4 gigabits per second link rate using two streams, connecting to two of the streams to the client device. The other experiment will be from the Intel side that will compare the 6 gigahertz to the 5 gigahertz link via a video call, where you will actually be able to witness the superior performance that the 6 gigahertz band enables by reducing the latency and the jitter in the video that you'll be able to observe. The third experiment compares the throughput of the 6 gigahertz to the 5 gigahertz legacy band, comparing Broadcom AP to a Broadcom client. In this one, we'll demonstrate the best throughput possible with the 6 gigahertz band versus the legacy 5 gigahertz band. With that, I will pass on to Carlos, and then we'll get to see some of the experiment results.
Thank you so much, Burhan, and thanks for clarifying the improvement that have been done in the 6E generation by allowing the channel of 160 megahertz along with different or multiple streams that will increase the throughput of the end user. So now we're going to pass the floor to Mr. Carlos from Intel to talk about the Intel client card that used in the experiment that we have done and the pilots that already support the 6E generation of Wi-Fi. So, Mr. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Carlos Aguirre, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Go-to-Market Activities for Intel for wireless. I'm excited to have the opportunity to speak here and to have been able to collaborate with my partners from the Wireless Broadband Alliance, Broadcom and Tiago. So, thank you very much. The part that we used for this demo was a shipping part in a laptop that was produced by MSI. It's a gaming laptop. We launched our product, the AX210, late last year in Q4, and it subsequently was announced at CES in January to be included in several new platforms that launched from different PC manufacturers. It's currently supported in all of our 10th and 11th gen platforms as a premium configurable option. And so we're starting to see different PC manufacturers announce support for Wi-Fi 6E in their laptops. Initially, it's been mostly in the commercial space and also in the gaming space. But by the second half of the year, we expect to see more and more consumer options available as well. Our product supports the full 1200 megahertz band. We think that's critical to be able to support the gigabit speeds that we've become used to with our AX products. And that's the other thing that I wanted to mention is that the solution is completely backwards compatible when needed with previous generations and with legacy Wi-Fi and legacy spectrum. If the new spectrum isn't available at your home yet, you haven't upgraded your home network or your business network, you will have that legacy support until you have the ability to upgrade your infrastructure locally. And so it's a great legacy performance when needed, and also it enables the amazing 6 gigahertz capabilities of gigabit speeds when desired because of all of the 160 channels, the low latency for video conferencing and collaboration and gaming. We think that we actually view Wi-Fi 6E and the 6 gigahertz spectrum allocations for Wi-Fi as the biggest thing to happen to Wi-Fi in nearly 20 years. And we're really excited to see the ramp in 21.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate your support and efforts along the trial. So I would just conclude this session of the trial by sincere thanks to all of our partners from WBA, Intel, and Broadcom. And I will add also at the bottom here that by this licensing that CITC has assigned in the 6 gigahertz of 1.2 gigahertz spectrum bandwidth to the license XM's Wi-Fi 6E generation, that CITC increased the assigned frequencies to the Wi-Fi services with 200% additional. So that's conclude our session. Thanks a lot for your listening.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear colleagues, good morning, afternoon, and evening. My name is Tamer Azab, Director for MENA at Access Partnership, the world-leading tech policy consultancy. I'm delighted to be with you today to moderate this panel on Wi-Fi 6, which is part of this timely and relevant event organized by the CITC to exchange information and perspectives a new generation of Wi-Fi technologies and their benefits to Saudi Arabia. Let me first thank the CITC leadership, His Excellency Abdullah bin Amir Sawaha, Minister of Communications and Information Technology and the Chairman of the Board. Also, His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Al-Tamimi, the Governor, Dr. Mohammed Al-Utaibi, the Deputy Governor, and the Radio Spectrum team. In the past few years, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia progressively developed friendly business environments that would have elevated the Saudi people's quality of life. As an observer, I believe the Kingdom is determined to further enhance the people's lives and strengthen the economy by fostering the digital transformation enabled by the most innovative connectivity infrastructure. The CITC was up to this challenge and started a deep overhaul process to modernize and enable the regulatory framework to advance the goals of Vision 2030. The vehicle that would transfer and carry the Kingdom to the 21st century and beyond. In this vein, the CITC has in the past months done a substantial job reviewing telecom services licensing frameworks, cloud computing rules, IoT, spectrum regulations, and equipment technical specifications, and have done so in consultation with domestic and international stakeholders. All this work is the building block for the future of the ICT sector as a catalyst of economic growth and innovation in benefit of the Saudi people. The jewel of the crown, the Spectrum Outlook, Commercial and Innovative Use 2021 to 2023 was released 2 days ago. This forward-looking policy establishes a roadmap to enable different connectivity technologies, leveraging spectrum resources in the most optimal manner. The CITC has been attentive to the technology landscape and future trends with this document and specific decisions, such as the opening up the entire 6 GHz band for Wi-Fi. So it has positioned itself as a global leader in spectrum and connectivity policy. This outlook is an action plan for the next 3 years and would require all efforts from all stakeholders to implement. We as Access Partnership will be delighted to contribute to the efforts of the Kingdom in this regard. To celebrate this remarkable policy achievement and discuss the many benefits of new generations of Wi-Fi technology, please allow me to introduce a group of distinguished industry leaders. First of all, Mr. Christopher Zimanski, Director of Product Marketing and Technology Strategy at Broadcom, who will tell us about the importance of CITC's decision on the Saudi market as well as on regional and global levels. Also, Mr. Guillaume Lebron, a public policy manager at Facebook, will explain to us the 6 GHz use cases, terminals, and applications. Mr. Hassan Yaqoob, a principal wireless systems architect at Intel, will take us in a technical deep dive journey about Wi-Fi, current, and next standards. Last but not least, Mrs. Martha Swells, President of Dynamic Spectrum Alliance, will talk about the ongoing discussions globally on the 6 GHz band. These presentations will be followed by Q&A session, so please do not hesitate to send your questions on the appropriate channels. With that, I would like to call Chris, please, to present his.
Many thanks for the introduction, Tamer, and many thanks to CITC for inviting me to speak here today on this historic day. Today I'll be presenting on Wi-Fi 6E and in Saudi Arabia and the impact. My name is Christopher Szymanski. I'm Director of Product Marketing for for Broadcom's mobile connectivity division. And I've been working on 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi for about 5 years now. So first, we're here today because Saudi Arabia has made a historic decision. It's the very first country in Europe, Middle East, or Africa to announce the whole 6 gigahertz band for unlicensed use. This now leads to over 2 gigahertz of mid-band license-exempt spectrum. The kingdom is #1 in global spectrum availability for Wi-Fi with this decision. And the importance really cannot be understated. Spectrum is the lifeblood of wireless communications. Well, what does that look like? Taking a look at a recent consultation, RI 117, we looked at all of the mid-band available spectrum in the kingdom for Wi-Fi. And in the 2.4 band, we have 85 megahertz of spectrum. And then in the 5 gigahertz band, we have an additional 250 megahertz in the lower part and 355 megahertz in the upper part of the 5 gigahertz band. And then this decision adds another 1,200 megahertz of spectrum. In addition, we have short-range wireless devices, which will be very, very useful for enabling very low-power portable devices. And these are going to fuel applications like AR and VR and telemedicine, and that adds an additional 145 megahertz of spectrum. 6 gigahertz was kicked off by the US decision in April 2020. And since then, we've had significant adoption throughout the world, with countries either having studied and consulted on the band or designating the band, with Saudi Arabia's historic decision just a few days ago. We broke down the momentum on a quarterly basis. And as I indicated, the FCC started this. And then as we look quarter by quarter, you can see an increasing number of announcements leading to this quarter, where you have product momentum, where routers and smartphones were introduced into the market. Wi-Fi 6E platforms for laptops were introduced. Late breaking, Samsung and LGE just announced QLED based televisions will have Wi-Fi 6E, which is not on this slide. In the Americas, we have Brazil, Honduras, and Guatemala designating the entire 6 gigahertz band. The FCC is opening up additional consultations to make the 6 gigahertz band even more flexible. And Canada, Mexico, and Peru have issued further consultations. In EMEA, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have been considering the entire 6 gigahertz band, with Saudi Arabia taking the lead with its announcement this week. Egypt and Norway have opened up consultations. So what we're seeing is the momentum growing. What does this look like from a chip perspective? Well, from Broadcom's perspective, we introduced a full suite of Wi-Fi 6E chips early last year. For smartphone, we introduced the 4389. That chip is already in the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra and is available on the market. For consumer access points and extenders, Burhan earlier discussed the trial, and that trial incorporated the 43684, which is a 4x4 160 megahertz capable chip. And then we also have a full suite of enterprise access points. So with the chips that we've already introduced, we have gigabit class products that are already on the market. So Phil Solis, research director for IDC, had stressed the importance of the 6 gigahertz band in 2020. And he said if the spectrum was made available early enough so that manufacturers could plan on the spectrum and deploy, he would expect momentum of products that support operation in 6 gigahertz to ramp very, very quickly. And the preliminary projection was that there would be 316 million Wi-Fi 6E devices entering the market in 2021. The Wi-Fi Alliance has already certified 14 Wi-Fi 6E devices, and router manufacturers such as Asus and Netgear, who have been powered by Broadcom, have already received their FCC certification and are marketing their products in the United States. And as I mentioned earlier, the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra launched the world's first Wi-Fi 6E smartphone, so significant product momentum. In the United States, although the decision was made in April, the rules that enabled import and market were only finalized late in December. So to have this sort of traction already in Q1 shows the importance of the 6 gigahertz band. So what is Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E? Well, it's the 6th generation of Wi-Fi, and the E means that it's been extended into the 6 gigahertz band. And it's important to understand that this defines premium. Wi-Fi 6 was designed, and the moniker in IEEE is 802.11ax, really to make multi-user operations and enable more devices to connect in a more seamless fashion and provide a better user experience. Typically, you'd see a maximum bandwidth of 80 megahertz channel and 1 gigabit per second in phones. OFDMA and target wait time provided better traffic scheduling and greater multi-user benefits. And really, at the end of the day, the core benefit is network predictability and stability. Instead of having these really high peak numbers that you hear Wi-Fi is capable of, it moves the average up so that it's closer to peak. With Wi-Fi 6E, you're now achieving over 2 gigabits per second in smartphones. It's greenfield spectrum, which means that you have a much better chance of having non-overlapping networks, and that's leading to sub-millisecond latency. With Wi-Fi 6E, application providers can rely on a much better user experience, and we expect to see a significant uptake in digitally immersive experiences. Wi-Fi 6E meets IMT 2020 criteria for indoor and dense urban use cases. And what does that mean? Well, when we're looking at speeds, a Wi-Fi 6E access point is typically a tri-band router, and it's capable of processing 10 gigabits per second. We can achieve latencies below 1 millisecond, meets the power efficiency requirements of 5G, provides higher capacity and more coverage. The beauty of Wi-Fi is that it's backward compatible. So a Wi-Fi 6E product will work in the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz band, but also can take advantage of the greenfield spectrum that Saudi Arabia has just opened up for unlicensed use. It's extremely low cost. There's no separate chip and there's no new radio because the 6 gigahertz band is proximate to the 5 gigahertz band. We can deploy this very economically, and the time to market was extremely fast. This is Wi-Fi that delivers 2 gigabits of data to the palm of your hands, which is 5 times more than what we would typically see today in a typical high-end smartphone. It's going to enable robust gigabit plus throughput throughout the home for multifamily dwelling units, homes, indoor public venues, and industrial IoT. It's Wi-Fi that delivers less than 1 millisecond latency and is expected to power wireless AR, VR, UHD video streaming, high-speed tethering, and in-vehicle entertainment. 6 gigahertz ushers in not only today's Wi-Fi, but the next decade of Wi-Fi. We're already on track in IEEE to develop the next generation of Wi-Fi, which Wi-Fi Alliance will name Wi-Fi 7. And this is expected to power video, AR, VR, boost telemedicine, education, worker training. And the applications are going to really require stable, deterministic wireless communications that 6 gigahertz will provide. Saudi Arabia's decision will enable Wi-Fi to deliver value for the next decade. The optimal use of the 6 gigahertz band is with very wide channels. And the IEEE is standardizing Wi-Fi 7 to enable 320 megahertz channels. Typically, to enable even in a residential setting, a decent user experience, you need a minimum of 3 non-overlapping channels. The Kingdom's decision to enable all 1200 megahertz of 6 gigahertz means that you'll have 3 of those non-overlapping channels. We expect then this to provide 5 gigabits per second to the palm of your hands, even lower latency, even better robustness. So the Kingdom's decision has really paved the way for the future of digital communications. Thank you.
Tamer, you're just muted.
Sorry, it was a technical issue. Thank you, Chris, for this fruitful and productive slide deck on Wi-Fi 6 and 7 and the future of Wi-Fi in general. We would like now to move to our friend Guillaume, who will explain to us the different use cases and terminals for Wi-Fi 6. You have the floor, Guillaume.
Thank you, Tamer. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. Obviously, as we've just discussed, we're living with an incredible decision, which is very exciting from a technical standpoint. What I want to share with you today is a deep dive on what it will mean and what it will bring to the citizen of the kingdom, and also to all the economic players, what they will be able to achieve with this decision and this technology. So the first step is to take a step back and look at how this decision to open 1200 megahertz of the 6 gigahertz band is really fitting with the CITC's 2023 vision. And in that vision, the first goal is really to enable reliable communication services and innovative digital technologies. And you will see that the decision to open the 6 gigahertz band is really fulfilling that goal. It's exactly in the middle of that objective. And in order to do that, there's really two aspects of it. It will promote investment and competition, which is a first step, but also it will enable the digitization of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And that's what I will try to demonstrate in the further slides to show exactly how it will impact the different initiatives that are in place in the kingdom. And how CITC was proposing to do that in its 2023 vision was to manage spectrum effectively. And that's, in a sense, what the decision from Tuesday is all about. But also enable digitization and the adoption of emerging technology. And that's where the decision on the 6 gigahertz band is really enabling the adoption of many innovative technologies, as we will see in the next slides. I would like to focus on three different type or categories of devices to share with you how they will change the life of people and of the industry in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The first one is low power indoor use cases. And by that, it's a typical Wi-Fi that you know and use every day. So it basically allows you to access the internet from anywhere inside your home. It could be a home, but it could also be your office, a commercial building, but it's indoor. And moving to the 6 gigahertz band and to Wi-Fi 6E means that you will get speeds like 1.4 gigabits per second at 7 meters, so the size of a room. And what it means is that this is really the wireless interface for the gigabit internet. So the Wi-Fi, previous generation, the Wi-Fi were appropriate for ADSL and this kind of speeds, But once you get fiber connectivity to the buildings, then you really need to step up and use Wi-Fi 6E to plainly leverage the connectivity that is offered by fiber. In terms of use cases, there are many of them, whether it's a residential access point, so at a private house, you can have multiple access points so that people can stay connected throughout their house or throughout a building, throughout a commercial building or an office. You have all the aspects of industrial indoor public venues, but also industrial IoT. So it's not just private, it's also for public usage, but it's all indoor. Now, what does it mean when it comes to Saudi Arabia specifically? To me, what it means mostly is that it will really enable to further the national digital transformation. So in 2019, the kingdom already had 3 million plus households connected to fiber. And this fiber connectivity was just at the point of connectivity, but not necessarily throughout the house. By opening the 6 gigahertz band, this will really unleash the fiber connectivity, and the people will be able to enjoy the speed and the reliability of the connectivity throughout their house. So immediately, it will improve the connectivity of many citizens. The second aspect is that if you think about all the platform and the digital services that have been put in place, whether you're talking about e-education with platforms like Noor, IEN, eTry, if you're thinking about electronic medicine with a unified electronic medical record, or if you're talking about e-government with some of these platforms, well, all of these platforms will be functioning faster and delivering a better service to everyone. So people will really feel that this is improving their life and taking them on that path to digitization of society. Another aspect is that back in 2019, the kingdom was ranked 13 in terms of speed for fixed internet. With the decision that was made on Tuesday, there was really no limit to what can be achieved in the coming years. It's just about like having the fiber connecting more home, and the Wi-Fi will be able to deliver all that potential and really increase the speed that are achieved on the fixed internet. So the future is really bright in terms of the ranking, in terms of connectivity. And finally, when you think about the Hajj season, many pilgrims are enjoying having Wi-Fi connectivity in all the different access points that are made available for them. And all of these access points, due to this decision to open up the 6 gigahertz band, will be much faster. So it means much better service for the pilgrims and a much better connectivity overall when they're coming for the pilgrimage. The next use case that I want to discuss is short-range wireless use cases. And there are really two aspects in that. There's very low power portable devices that can operate indoor and outdoor, and client-client to communication that operate indoor. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about augmented reality, virtual reality glasses, video streaming, file tethering. Overall, it's a very short link, typically lower than 3 meters, but then is a very high throughput, like 2 gigabits per second. If you have augmented reality glasses on your head, you want them to be able to communicate fast and at low power. And that makes them able to operate both indoor and outdoor because there's no compatibility issue. Now, the question is, how will these innovative use cases go? Here we're really in the realm of new use cases, new types of devices. How will they impact the life of the citizen and industry in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? Well, first of all, when you think about even platforms that I use today, like the Agile platform, looking at real estate, you can start imagining all different ways to interact with the world as soon as you're thinking in terms of AR and VR. You could visit your next house just from the comfort of your home and have a much more streamlined operation of these kind of services. When you're thinking about e-learning, there are already great programs that are in place in Saudi Arabia. But if you want to train a for example, a surgeon, AR/VR will really help you bring them in as close as possible to reality, so they train and understand what will happen in a real life. And that's where this platform for e-learning that are already in place can be taken to the next level and really to a new experience for e-learning. In terms of museum and the culture of Saudi Arabia, AR/VR can really expand the horizon of these tools. You can think about any citizen can, from the comfort of their home, visit the different museum and really learn about the history and the culture through AR/VR. And that will obviously extend the reach of this museum. But it's not just about museum, it's about culture in general. If you think about the ATA program or game mode, you're talking about programs that are really trying to improve the content production in Saudi Arabia. And by having the latest AR/VR tools at disposal, that means that the content provider will be able to experiment and develop and bring the very best and latest content for the world and really put Saudi Arabia in a good position. Finally, I'll talk about standard power use cases, which are a little bit different in the sense that they're not directly connecting to you, but they're allowing to improve the infrastructure, the connectivity infrastructure, by bringing multi-gigabits per second to outdoor coverage. So parks, stadium, industry outlets. And it's really point-to-multipoint rural connectivity at multi-gigabit speed. How could that translate in real use cases? That's what we'll see now. So the first one is really extending fiber optics. If you remember in 2019, it was about 3 million plus households in Saudi Arabia that were connected to fiber. How to extend fiber more quickly is to bring it within a neighborhood and then have the last hop for the house that are difficult to connect directly to fiber to be done through another technology. So that's one aspect where standard power can really help extend the reach of the fiber network and the fiber connectivity. The second one is extending the digital infrastructure when you have either a localized or a need which is just depending in time and it's not always there. In that case, standard power can really help in bringing this infrastructure in a flexible way so that you can extend it and scale it down when it's no longer needed. And last but not least, it should contribute really, in my mind, to the Vision 2030. For example, the quality of life program. When you think about the industry and how to connect all the industry, if you have an oil field or different kind of industry places, by using standard power use cases, you'll be able to have fiber connectivity without the need to have fiber at every single place in your industry park. And that can really improve the connectivity for the industry. It's not just for the industry, obviously, but a number of places like heritage venue, parks, museums, zoo. And even when you talk about esports tournaments, they really need very good connectivity. And you will be in a situation where you can offer them through standard power use cases without having to have fiber to every single computer. So that's it for the use cases. And I was trying to think about what the way forward is now. And what we already have is a decision from Tuesday, which is a fantastic decision that will really enable all these use cases that I talked about. In order to be able to leverage them, we still need to look and have a review at the wireless LAN and Wi-Fi usage regulation. That's one aspect. And the other aspect is to look at the technical regulation. And I know that a public consultation is underway to make sure that this is happening so that we can bring the product to the market, make sure that people get their hands on it and can start using these products that will, in my opinion, no doubt, significantly improve the quality of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thanks so much for this good presentation, actually. And hopefully next time when we attend such event with CITC, we'll use AV VR sunglasses, glasses, and we'll enjoy the full capabilities and potentials of Wi-Fi 6 and related connectivity solutions. With that, we will go and we'll have our dear colleague Hassan, who will take us in a deep dive illustration about Wi-Fi standards, the current one and the future one. And I have nothing else to say more. Please, Hassan, the floor is yours.
Tamer, can you hear me?
Yes, Hassan.
Okay.
Please share your screen. Yes, please.
Yes, I cannot. If you can help me with, I don't have permission to share, I believe.
Okay, just a second.
I still cannot share my screen.
Do you see my screen now, Hassan?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody, and thanks CITC, Mr. Abdul Hadi, and Tamer for inviting me. My name is Hassan Yagoubi from Intel Corporation. I'm going to present this session on Wi-Fi standards, current and next generation. Okay. Okay, maybe, yeah, all right, so that's good. We start with a little bit of history about the IEEE standard for Wi-Fi technologies. Basically, what Wi-Fi Alliance does is primarily to develop certification program for a MAC and PHY layer based on IEEE standards that are on MAC and PHY. The first generation of Wi-Fi that was numbered was Wi-Fi Certified 4, launched in 2007, basically based on IEEE 802.11 BGN, focusing on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz band. In 2013, Wi-Fi 5 was basically launched based on adding 802.11 AC and 5 gigahertz band. In 2019, we had the Wi-Fi 6 launched, introducing 802.11ax, focusing on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And earlier this year, in January, we had the launch of extension Wi-Fi 6E. Basically that we are focusing today because of the addition of the 6 gigahertz band. In the future, targeting 2024, we are targeting Wi-Fi 7 based on IEEE 802.11be, covering the tri-band 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz. Wi-Fi Alliance also have the certification program for WiGig, which is based on 802.11ad and AY, covering the millimeter wave spectrum 57 to 71 gigahertz band. In addition to this certification program on MAC and PHY layer, Wi-Fi Alliance has other specification and certification programs focusing on security, access, applications, services, and optimization of the system. Some of the examples are Wi-Fi certified WPA3 for security improvement, and also Wi-Fi pass point to enable basically Wi-Fi access, streamlining Wi-Fi access and eliminating the need for users to find and authenticate a network each time they visit. On top of these, Wi-Fi Alliance has also some spectrum regulatory activities on unlicensed band. One example relevant to what we are discussing here on 6 gigahertz band is the Wi-Fi Alliance 6 gigahertz AFC compliance program that is basically under development as we speak. Can go next slide. Next slide, I'm covering the IEEE 11AX key features for Wi-Fi 6. Here in this slide, I've listed different features. One feature is downlink uplink multi-user MIMO. This is the feature that improved the scalability and spectral efficiency of the network. We have the OFDMA feature to optimize user scheduling and scalability again. We have a number of features that improve the spectral efficiency, peak throughput, and user experience. Those features are, for example, 160 megahertz channel bandwidth that is compared to the 80 megahertz channel bandwidth that we had in Wi-Fi 5 and 11AC. The other feature is 8x8, maximum 8x8 spatial streams, number of spatial streams, and the third feature is 1024 QAM. All these features improve spectral efficiency, peak throughput, and user experience. Then we have the beamforming that helps with the minimizing the network interference and also spectral efficiency. We have the PSS coloring to basically help devices and routers to identify and prioritize local traffics and also deprioritize and tune out noise from other networks. Then we have another key feature, target wake time, that Chris mentioned in his presentation. This is the feature to improve device power efficiency and battery life improvement for those power-sensitive devices and applications such as IoT. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide now, where we are basically summarizing the improvement that we get in Wi-Fi 6 as a result of these features that we just went through. We are expecting 4x greater scalability through enablement of OFDMA features that enable managed, reliable, efficient connectivity across more devices, or equivalently, if we keep the number of devices the same, we can have like fewer APs as the requirements. Then we have the reduced interference. In Wi-Fi 6, the BSS coloring can improve, basically reduce the interference and prioritize the traffic within the cell. We have the improved security by enabling WPA3 feature, enabling next generation authentication and military grade encryption. As far as the throughput and peak throughput and spectral efficiency is concerned, in a typical scenario compared to 11AC or Wi-Fi 5, we are expecting 3 times faster performance. More specifically, in Wi-Fi 6, 11AX, in a 2x2 configuration, 1024 QAM and 160 megahertz channel, compared to a Wi-Fi 5, 11AC with 2x2, 256 QAM and 80 megahertz channel, we are getting 3 times faster performance. And of course, the max throughput for 11AX is around 10 gigabit per second, but we just mentioned a typical scenario. And then the last attribute is the responsiveness and the latency, the feature that Guillaume talked about, an important feature in some of the applications and some of the IoT applications, AR, VR. We are expecting 75% lower latency, and that's achieved through enablement of the OFDMA data management and also the BSS coloring feature that we mentioned earlier. Okay, let's go to the next slide that is covering basically Wi-Fi 7, upcoming Wi-Fi 7 and 11BE key features. The key features that we have in 11BE listed here is the 320 megahertz channel bandwidth compared to the maximum 160 megahertz channel bandwidth that we have from 11AX and Wi-Fi 6. We have also the 4096 QAM modulation, and we have up to 16 special stream capability in 11BE. And then we have the multi-link operation, MAC layer, and also multi-AP operation. These are the two features that help with the reliability. And then we have the low latency, deterministic low latency improvement. All these features, we think that is experience, spectral efficiency, connection density, and area capacity, peak data rate, and low latency and determinism. So that's the quick summary of what we are expecting in 11BE and Wi-Fi 7. Next slide, I'm going to cover the channelization for the 6 gigahertz band in a little bit more detail. Chris earlier mentioned about the number of channels for Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7. What we have in this is the basically IEEE global band class channelization for 11AX, 6E, and also 11BE, Wi-Fi 7. For 11AX or 6E, we are going to have be able to enable up to 7 of these 160 megahertz channels, and this is supporting home and office spectral efficiency, frequency planning, and high system capacity. And then for 11BE and Wi-Fi 7, we can have up to 3 of these 320 megahertz channels. And according to 11BE, we have 2 configuration overlapping, basically channelization, and that can support like flexible device implementations or flexible regulatory or coexistence compliance when we have these overlapping scenarios with 160 megahertz shift. Wi-Fi 7 and 802.11be is actually targeting a throughput of at least 30 gigabit per second. Again, like CITC decision to allocate the entire 1200 megahertz is very important in maximally utilizing all the channels that are provisioned in Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7. The next 2 slides, which are my last slides, I'm going to cover a little bit of details on the IoT aspect, Wi-Fi expansion into the IoT applications. As you know, Wi-Fi has already been incredibly successful in home and enterprise markets. And then in the office environments, both IT and service provider operators have been delivering best effort services as well as voice and video collaboration services for many years already. And now with Wi-Fi 6, we can support existing IoT applications. Many of the existing IoT applications such as retail, healthcare, industrial IoT, AR, VR that was mentioned earlier, supply chain, and warehouses, manufacturing, heavy industry, natural resources and energy, and an important application, power utilities, automation, and robotics. So there are many of these industrial IoT applications, and all of these applications are what we consider business critical. And these applications require much tighter degree of control on some key parameters of the system, such as latency, jitter, and reliability. And for these application, Wi-Fi needs to improve its deterministic nature. And in the last slide, next slide, I cover basically the progression on this aspect and how this important issue is being addressed in current and future releases of Wi-Fi. So in this slide, I have Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6 release 2. And then I have Wi-Fi 6E, which is based on the 6 gigahertz band, as we discussed earlier. And then for the future, I have the Wi-Fi 7 listed here. For each one of releases, there are key features to help with the determinism that I mentioned earlier. For IoT applications, for Wi-Fi 6, the optimal scheduling that via uplink OFDMA and scalability via OFDMA in general, battery life improvement through the target wake time feature that Chris mentioned earlier. These are the features that are already covered in Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6E, of course, we are going to have access to more spectrum up to 1200 megahertz in 6 gigahertz. And therefore, we can achieve more reliability because we are accessing a clean and greenfield type of a spectrum. For Wi-Fi 6R2, we are going to improve scalability via uplink multi-user MIMO that we mentioned earlier. Again, longer battery life, target wake time. We are going to be able to achieve more reliability through preamble puncturing and also some specific design for PPDU for extended range single user type of traffics. In Wi-Fi 7, we are going to take a bigger step on achieving reliability and determinism. We are going to have enable the dual carrier modulation and multi-link replication, two features that help with the reliability through redundancy. Then we are going to also improve deterministic nature and low latency quality of services of the system through multi-AP coordination and scheduling, and also multi-link quality of services. So as you see here, each Wi-Fi generation adds determinism incrementally, and those are more specifically scheduling, scalability, reliability, battery life improvement. And on Wi-Fi 7, we are providing explicit deterministic function in support of multi-mission IoT applications. So that was actually my last slide. And with that, I thanks CITC again. Back to you, Tamer.
Thank you so much, Hassan, and thank you for this deep dive presentation and explanation for different Wi-Fi standards. With that, I would like to invite my dear Martha to present on the global movement around this frequency band, 6 gigahertz, and what kind of trends we are seeing in the future of the short and long term. Go ahead, Martha.
Thank you, Tamer, and hi, everyone. It's really for me a pleasure to be here today. I thank CITC for their invitation. And I will start saying that it's really a great opportunity that your decision is really opening a new, I would say it's really opening new perspectives for Saudi Arabia. So I was able to share my screen before. I'm just sharing it now. Give me please 1 second. Yeah, I had to restart. I hope you can see it now. Okay. My name is Marta Suarez. I'm the president of the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance, and I'm going to speak today about decisions and discussions on 6 gigahertz internationally. So for those of you that don't know very much about Dynamic Spectrum Alliance, we are industry for-profit organization advocating for laws, regulations, and economic best practices. And we are really working on spectrum sharing as a way to foster innovation and affordable connectivity for all. So my first message is, I was saying, like, congratulations to CITC, because this decision makes, because of this decision, Saudi Arabia is among the leading countries globally in enabling innovative digital services. And we find a very good balance in the proposal of a spectrum outlook between license exempt, and likely licensed spectrum. So we think that that is a key and very crucial approach to really make sure that you have digital services in the kingdom. We also think and recognize that Saudi Arabia is the first country in Europe, Middle East, and Africa region to make the entire 6 gigahertz band available for Wi-Fi. And this is clearly setting the conditions for the kingdom's leadership in the region and globally. And also, it's a historic decision making the entire 6 gigahertz and 60 gigahertz band license exempt. So it's also important because you have a very good trade-off between mid-band spectrum for license exempt access and high band, which provides capacity. So we also think, and we would like to recognize publicly, that CITC had a strong engagement and collaboration with all stakeholders. At the beginning of this workshop, we had a presentation that explained the process. So we think that it's really an evidence-based decision, and that's why it will have a long-term impact. So now let's see why we think it's important. So we are talking here about 6,200 megahertz for license-exempt access. And we have been talking about the technology, but I would just like to go a little bit back and see which are the forecasts and the expectations for global IP traffic. And in that sense, I have taken an image from the Cisco VNI that I think is very relevant, because when we see the global IP traffic by local access technology, basically we are seeing that there are different technologies that will be carrying more and more traffic, and we see that that is continuously growing. So expectations and demand from final users is always growing. And we can see the different difference in traffic for different technologies. Here in dark blue and green, we see all technologies that will be using Wi-Fi. It could be for Wi-Fi only devices, or it could be from Wi-Fi from mobile devices. And we see that that total amount is more than 50%. So it's really relevant, the fact that we are considering more spectrum for Wi-Fi, because that is like the first resource that is needed to provide high capacity, and also to enable a lot of new use cases, as Guillaume from Facebook was describing before. We also had an overview, but I would like to summarize some of the benefits that we are expecting and that you will see in the very short term from Wi-Fi 6E. So the first advantage is we are going to have more contiguous spectrum. We also saw from the demo that we are talking about gigabit speeds here. We were talking about more than 2.5 gigabits per second, of throughput. We also have wider channels, so that provides more capacity. And as Hassan explained before, that also sets the conditions for Wi-Fi 7 in the future with even wider channels. It's very positive also for 5G applications or for 5G ecosystem to have extremely low latency. And I think another important point here is the high capacity, because there are many applications that will have a lot of terminals, devices connected at the same time. So that's also a great improvement. Guillaume summarized the different operating classes. I wanted to quickly present them here. So we have the very low power applications that are creating a wider ecosystem in terms of devices for augmented reality, for virtual reality. Low power indoor applications that will improve the quality of Wi-Fi networks at companies, at public spaces, and at different like inside buildings networks. And there is also the important opportunity for standard power applications and use cases. Like, for example, in a public place, you could have an open network, and then many people will be able to connect to that network. Other thing I would like to highlight from this decision is that we have a license exempt access, and we also have coexistence with existing incumbent services in the band. So this is really a very efficient use of the spectrum, because you don't need to go through a clearance process. The fact that it's license exempt is also creating a wider ecosystem. You could have like low power indoors and very low power applications coexisting with incumbent services. And in the case of a standard power, there is also coexistence. But in that case, we will need a mechanism to make sure that there is an opportunity for spectrum sharing and that there is protection for incumbents in the band. So in that case, we can use database and automated tools for that dynamic spectrum access. So also, we see that the standard can operate in the entire 6 gigahertz band, and that is important. We will see in a moment about the regulatory momentum that we are seeing worldwide, but it makes a lot of sense to benefit from economies of scale and creating that larger market, because it makes equipment more affordable for final users. We also see that this decision will accelerate many use cases associated to 5G, and all the 3 applications and use cases that I mentioned are important and will provide different opportunities. And also, we can see that Wi-Fi 6E supports 5G user scenarios like high definition video in non-mobile environments, augmented and virtual reality, massive IoT, and then Hassan made a great explanation about where we are in terms of standardization, and also low latency applications. So with all these benefits, let's see about what's going on in terms of regulatory decisions worldwide. So let's start with the Americas, and with Asia Pacific, so regions 2 and 3 from ITU. In the case of the Americas, you can see in this figure in green color are those countries that had already public consultations about the frequency band. And in orange, you can see the countries that already have final frameworks adopted. So in terms of final regulations in the Americas, we have the US. It was the first country in April 2020 that opened the entire band for unlicensed access. Then we had Chile, who also opened the full band, Guatemala and Honduras, 2 countries in Central America. And most recently, we had, Honduras and Brazil were the last 2 countries. And this year, we had the 2 of them, and Brazil also for the full band. So we can say that all the countries in region 2 that have decided to adopt regulations for unlicensed access or license exempt access in the 6 gigahertz band did it for the entire band. And that is really relevant. And then we also had consultations in those countries that you can see in green. So we had Canada, Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia, Peru, Argentina. And only from all those countries we had, they already closed the process. We are expecting final decisions in the short term. So if we expect that this map will be finalized by the end of this year, as you can see, we will have really global harmonization in region 2. In the case of Asia Pacific, we had decisions from Republic of Korea, and they also decided to open the full ban, the entire ban, and we also have some ongoing processes. So my main message here is like, it's really adoption of Wi-Fi 6E. It's moving very fast. And I'm sure that the example that Saudi Arabia is creating for other regions is very relevant. So let's see now region 1. In this case, you can see the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with the great announcement we had 2 days ago. But we can see here what's going on also in other groups of countries or in some particular countries. So in the case of CPT, we had the Radio Spectrum Committee last month, and we are expecting the final decision to be adopted later this year. It's already a decision that was making all the different instances and groups have approved that. And that's creating harmonization for the lower part of the band. United Kingdom opened the entire, opened the lower part of the 6 gigahertz band just after the US did it last year. And we have also a group of countries that have published public consultations. That was the case of Jordan. They closed their consultation in January this year. And their questions were regarding the full 6 gigahertz band. Right now, we also have ongoing consultation in Qatar, and they have also drafted a document for the full ban. United Arab Emirates adopted final decision in December last year for the lower part of the band, and other countries that are also considering the lower part of the band are Bahrain, Oman, and Egypt. In the case of Africa, what happened is that ATU, the African Telecommunications Union, created a task group that is dedicated to emerging technologies. They just finalized their 4th meeting recently. And that group is providing recommendations on license exempt access to lower 6 gigahertz band. As I mentioned, they had their last meeting, and now they're drafting and finalizing the document with the recommendation for the region. What I would like to highlight here is that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is really setting, is the first one in opening the entire ban. And that is providing a great example for the region because it's showing all the possibilities that could be adopted. And also important to mention that this decision has been, as I say, discussed with industry and is not on detriment of other technologies. It's really understood as a way to enhance and create the right conditions for a global, like a national digital ecosystem. So we hope that this will be example for other countries. I wanted to mention also DSA had some economic assessment studies in some countries. This is one that we made for Brazil. And of course, it's a particular case for Brazil, but I would like to share 2 conclusions that we found. The first is that there is a high economic value of related to license exempt access spectrum or unlicensed spectrum, because it's not like you're auctioning a particular frequency band, but it's the fact that it's license exempt and that you have a wider ecosystem and you can have enterprises have the opportunity to deploy their own networks is really pushing the economy. So in the case of Brazil, again, we found that there is an impact of $183 billion for the next 10 years. And the second conclusion I would like to mention here quickly is that the time for decisions is very important. If you wait too long before making a decision, you are losing the opportunity. It has an opportunity cost. So in the case of Brazil, and I think that was important for their final decision, we estimated that if they would wait 3 or 4 years before making the decision, the opportunity cost cost would be about $17 billion. So that's why it's like if you have a clear path, if you know what you're doing, like CITC did it in this case, it's important to decide it quickly so you can get the benefits in the short term. As conclusions, I would like to highlight that this decision about enabling more license-exempt spectrum is positive because it really makes a more efficient use of the spectrum. It ensures that existing incumbent services can continue to thrive in the band, and at the same time that you can have those incumbent services and additionally other license-exempt technologies like Wi-Fi 6 and others. It's an opportunity. It's also attending growing demand for wireless capacity with 160 megahertz channels. And it's very important for dense environment and public hotspots. Chipsets and equipment are already available. You even have there, and you show us with this trial how it works. As far as I know, there are 14 certified devices that operate in the entire band. There are economic benefits, even if it is license-exempt access. It also enables wireless innovation and new use cases for people and companies. We had many examples from Guillaume. CITC is also reinforcing their long-term vision because they're setting a clear path for Wi-Fi 7, and they are also considering future spectrum requirements according to the Wi-Fi Alliance studies. It also creates opportunities for innovative models, enabling cooperation between government and private sector. And what I think is the most important fact is that benefits are now. I mean, you will have the equipment and the technology. You explain it very well. This year, it's the time to finalize the conditions. But as soon as you finish those conditions, then people will be able to start the technology. So thank you for your attention. I think you are providing a great example of a new spectrum mindset. I didn't refer here to the lightly licensed approach, but also for the DSA, that is a great decision, and we celebrate that you are considering innovative technologies in the kingdom. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much. And with that, I believe we reached the Q&A session. And I would like to start with Chris. Chris, considering the importance of the Saudi ICT market and the leadership role in the GCC region and beyond, how do you think the decision to open the entire 60 gigahertz band will impact the national and regional discussions? And I would like to hear your point of view as a Broadcom, as a manufacturer for the chipsets.
Thank you, Tamer, for the question. So I don't think we can understate the importance of this decision and the timing. Operators plan their network deployments well in advance. And right now, the prevailing network configuration for a dense enterprise is up to 40 megahertz channel. But we see an increasing number of devices that people are bringing. They bring their own devices, that's the trend, and higher bandwidth applications, whether it's high definition or 8K video. And so capacity is being stretched. It's difficult to increase the density of access points because you start to have interference if you have overlapping networks. So when we're planning these networks, we need to make sure that we have a sufficient amount of access points covering the number of people that would want to access. With the Saudi decision to enable the entire 6 gigahertz band, we believe that network operators will plan for a baseline minimum of 80 megahertz channels, and you'll see a lot of 160 megahertz channel configurations, which means that the norm should be multi-100 megabit and even gigabit connectivity. And so that's very, very important as operators are planning their network topologies. Just like the US decision catalyzed the Americas, as Martha Suarez showed, we expect, given the Saudi Arabian decision and the South Korean decision and the Brazilian decision, we expect to see this catalyze other leaders throughout the world. The fact of the matter is scale is everything when it comes to deploying technologies at a economically feasible price point. And we now have, 20, 30% of the world's GDP that is either allocated the 6 gigahertz band or is contemplating allocating the entirety of the band. And so we're starting to get to a point where you have significant scale. I think that's going to lead to very, very rapid deployment. Broadcom's chips enable the entire 6 gigahertz band, which basically means that if there's an end product like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra that's operating in Saudi Arabia, then the user will be able to take advantage of all of the capabilities of that handset. Whereas countries that only open up a portion of the band, you're going to end up having a block in the firmware. And so in a way, it's like putting a governor on a race car. You bought the race car, but it's only capable of operating at half or a quarter of the speed. So the decision is truly historic, and we really believe that it's going to be a catalyst.
You mentioned earlier in your presentation that there is a trend, or the TV manufacturers or home appliances manufacturers are just started to take into consideration this technology and to integrate such chipsets to connect all devices within the home. So, how do you believe that will impact the economy of scale?
Well, that's a good question. I think that when you start to see the adoption of technologies in end products that typically will not adopt bleeding edge technology. So for example, smartphones, access points, laptop computers are typically the types of products that will adopt very rapidly the latest technologies. And you'll start to see IoT devices and other types of devices adopt these technologies a little bit later on. And so, as the cost comes down and as the technology proliferates across segments, seeing the adoption in these QLED TVs shows just the enormous importance of the 6 gigahertz band in providing a reliable user experience. So, with what Samsung and LG are doing, what that's going to lead to is probably more rapid adoption of operator deployed access points to take advantage of this 8K video. And then you're going to see more network programming in 8K video. So it's really going to accelerate digitally immersive services.
Thank you so much. Anyway, I will get back to you on extra questions, actually. So many people raised very good questions, and I will get back to you. My next question will go to Guillaume. Guillaume, as you know, the standards, restrictions, power limitations are all determined by the regulatory bodies in each and every country. So that said, each country may take their own path to set these conditions and specifications. What would be your recommendation with regards to Saudi Arabia? What would be your best advice for Saudi Arabia to accommodate different use cases and to accommodate different, I would say, terminals and equipment that could be placed on the market? Guillaume? Yep.
Hi, Tamer. Thanks for the question. Yes, I believe it's important to have these different categories of devices, and that's what we've seen in other regions, that people are really developing technical specifications which are tailored to some of these use cases. I've proposed 3, which are the ones that are most talked about around the world, and that are the ones that are clearly bringing innovation potential. If you define the right technical parameters for these 3 categories, you're suddenly giving all the tools for you people to basically innovate and really make the best out of the technology, make the most out of it. And so my recommendation would be really make sure that you look at these 3 different classes separately, and make sure you select the best parameter for them. That has to be partly based on the local assessment on what is really the reality in Saudi Arabia in terms, for example, if you discussing standard power clause, the coexistence with fixed link and all this kind of aspect needs to be taken into account. But that can be a discussion that can be conducted, and given all the momentum and all the support that this decision has, I'm sure that as an industry, we'll do our utmost to help and try to contribute when we can.
Actually, I received a question over the other channel. I believe we need to educate people about what is the difference between VLP, LPI, and standard power. The terminology is still not clear enough to people and to regulators as well. I believe the regulator would like to see maybe maximum limits. Within these limits, you can do whatever you want. You can deploy low power, very low power, or standard power, as long as you do not exceed the limits of that envelope. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, fair enough. What's important is to make sure that the technology do not interfere, and we know that it's possible and that we can come to that. And so let's take them one by one. You're talking about low power indoor. We know that these are devices that are in hundreds of milliwatt type of range. It could be from 250 to, I don't know, 500, maybe more. But what's important is that they operate indoor. And there is really this restriction to make sure they do not interfere with the satellite. The building entry loss, make sure that these devices will not create problems to the outside world. So that's one category, and it's in that power range that I just mentioned. For VLP, it's very important for these devices to be low power. So they do not need that hundreds of milliwatt type of power. They're more operating in the tens of milliwatts type of power. From the top of my head, in Europe is 25, but it's the order of magnitude that matters. And because they are much reduced power, they can go outdoor. So they don't have this limitation of indoor, they can go outdoor, but typically the lengths are much shorter. It's just around your body area, so it's about 2 to 3 meters. And they do not interfere naturally with the outside world just because it's that low power. And the last one, which is probably the next step, is to go to higher power and allow them outdoor, but in a much more controlled way. So when you're talking about standard power, it's really a device which is in discussion with a database that collaborates with the rest of the world to make sure that it does not interfere. So I'll give you an example. It could be a database where you know where fixed links are, and then the standard power makes sure that it does not operate in the vicinity of a fixed link to make sure it doesn't interfere. So it's a much more refined coexistence simulation so that you can achieve this higher power even in outdoor. So that's typically the 3 different type of categories, 3 different coexistence philosophy, but which really enable different use cases that I'll try to mention in my presentation.
Actually, as you have mentioned the database for standard power applications, I believe this is the spirit or the plan for CITC to deploy under the light licensing regime such kind of database to manage different services with different environments. On that, I'm not sure if you have experience in this area, but what will be your recommendation to CITC on how to build that database or how to manage this specific use case?
So if that's okay, I would pass the ball to Martha because she's the worldwide specialist on this topic. So I'm sure she would have a much more appropriate response than I would.
Of course. Martha, please. Thank you, Guillaume.
Thank you, Guillaume, and thank you, Amer. Well, yes, at the DSA, we are aware, and many of our members have a lot of experience in implementing databases for spectrum management and for dynamic spectrum access. So there are many mechanisms, and what we have seen from CITC is that they have a clear intention of considering databases for and automated tools for dynamic spectrum access. That is great because it's providing more efficiency, as I was mentioning. It's creating the opportunity for protecting incumbents and at the same time having standard power operations. So that's the first advantage. It's also the fact that it's dynamic. It's also a great tool for agility, to attend quickly the requirements from any users. And it's very transparent. CITC should fix the rules of how those databases can operate, and then according to those rules, the system will designate the users. We also think it is important to consider a broad ecosystem. So instead of just having one particular database, there are many commercial opportunities and many companies that could provide that service. So that will also create competition and better service. We have seen right now in terms of regulations, we have the example of the US that decided to enable 850 megahertz for standard power applications. And in the regulations, the FCC decided to enable automated frequency coordination systems. We know that South Korea is also considering what they call a KFC, that is also a Korean frequency coordination system. And we had in recent consultations some countries that were asking particular conditions. For example, Canada, we know that they are considering this type of solution, and Mexico also included that in their questions. So we think there will be commercially available solutions, not only from one provider, but from many providers. And we think that experience will be very important for future spectrum management, because we think that these type of tools are not just for one technology or for one particular frequency band, but they are really the future of spectrum management.
Actually, Martha, I find that interesting how decision related to releasing spectrum for license exempt applications will drive business and drive services and applications that I wasn't aware of that, and how such decisions from very important market like Saudi Arabia will create ideas and will create, I would say, impact on different verticals, on different markets, and on software developing, for example, as you have mentioned. And while you have the floor, I would like to ask you, Martha, in your opinion, how do you rank Saudi Arabia right now among the G20 countries with respect to spectrum release, in particular license exempt spectrum? And please feel free to elaborate on other frequency bands or other applications.
Yeah. Well, we are actively participating in public consultation and regulatory processes in different countries, regions of the world. And I have to say that the way CITC approached spectrum management in the last year has been very, very organized with a very clear vision. And that is really, I would like to highlight that, because we are seeing a vision, a goal, and all the actions that have been proposed in a very open and transparent way are really targeting that vision and are taking actions that are relevant. So we think not only unlicensed access, I mean, unlicensed access is a piece of that. And but one of the reasons why CITC decided to open the entire band is because they have been doing a great job in identifying spectrum for IMT2. So they know that there is not a trade-off, one or the other. They are making sure that there is enough licensed spectrum for cases that need that exclusive access. And at the same time, they are creating the conditions for license exempt. I would also say that Saudi Arabia is becoming a leader in terms of dynamic spectrum access, because they are targeting license access in many frequency bands. And it's very interesting because it has dynamic spectrum access for unlicensed systems, but also for different technologies, not only IEEE technologies, but also 3GPP technologies. And that is important because final users and industries will have the opportunity to choose the best technology that fits for their needs. So we are really excited to see this process. We hope we will continue, and we really want to continue participating in this process. And we think that by 2023, when all these decisions that have been proposed in the Outlook will be implemented and spectrum will be available, clearly Saudi Arabia will be an example for many other countries that haven't some of them are targeting this also similar vision, but don't have such a clear path. So we think that this will inspire many other countries, and we will have a showcase in the country of how technology can change lives and also economy.
Thank you, Martha. I'll get back to you, actually. I have an interesting question I will raise later on, but first I would like to hear from Hassan. Hassan, we have listened from different speakers, including yourself, about Wi-Fi 7. In your opinion, how far or close the industry from releasing Wi-Fi equipment, or at least to start the trials and conduct some tests on this equipment? Are we close enough, or still we need some time to get there?
Yeah, currently the target completion for IEEE 802.11be specification is end of 2023, later part of 2023. And if I'm not wrong, the target launch of Wi-Fi 7 in Wi-Fi Alliance is 2024. So we still have a few years to go, and probably we need to, we will have a better understanding basically about the schedule, and when we get closer to that date. But there are already a lot of activities in IEEE to basically target and enable the features that we were discussing, like in the presentation and during the call. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Now I would like to go back to Chris, and I will ask him a tricky question. Chris, what could differentiate between Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7 from 5G? Chris, do you hear me? Okay, Chris, my question is, what will differentiate Wi-Fi 6, 7, or whatever from 5G or 6G?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Broadcom believes that 5G and Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7 are complementary. Sure, there will be instances where there's overlap, but largely one is needed to enable the other. 5G is going to provide the massive roaming capability and connectivity capability outdoors, whereas indoors, densification, access points that provide a gigabit, 2 gigabit, 3 gigabit per second would be way too costly to manage through 5G. And so that's going to continue to be handled through Wi-Fi. And so the way that Broadcom views these things is sort of being hand in hand. They're complementary to deliver a service. Consumers expect a seamless experience. They don't care if it's cellular, they don't care if it's Wi-Fi, they don't care if it's fiber, they just want it to work. And at the end of the day, it's going to take industry working together to make sure that these applications work well and work seamlessly. With Wi-Fi 7, you're going to see a much higher degree of reliability. So not only are there going to be things that increase the throughput that we've discussed, like 320 megahertz channels, or possibly higher order QAM modulation, like 496 QAM, you're going to see things that will provide a much higher degree of reliability or determinism, like multi-link operations, which is very, very similar to carrier aggregation. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow these application providers to say, okay, this access point or this smartphone is capable of delivering 5 gigabits per second. But what will it do when you have 5 users, 6 users, 7 users on? What sort of reliability can I expect so that this user experience is done really, really well. Wi-Fi 6 was a tremendous down payment on that with OFDMA and target wait time and scheduling. And Wi-Fi 7 is going to build on that stability. And so you're going to just continue to achieve much higher reliability and service. And that's really what's needed for these applications to proliferate, if that makes sense, Tamer. So I think it's very, very important. And one of the things that is also very important to understand is that Wi-Fi is backward compatible. What does that mean? That means that the Wi-Fi 6 chips, so the Wi-Fi Alliance launched Wi-Fi 6 in December of 2019. Broadcom alone has shipped over 500 million Wi-Fi 6 chips. And I think we're approaching 600 million already. Huge uptick. And that means any Wi-Fi 6E device is going to have the benefit of operating with those Wi-Fi 6 devices in the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz bands. And then they're supercharged with that extra capacity in the 6 gigahertz band. Similarly, all of the Wi-Fi 6 access point and devices that are deployed will enjoy the benefits of Wi-Fi 7 in a mixed mode operation. Much of the innovation around Wi-Fi 7 is happening in the 6 gigahertz band. There's a very, very strong dependency. So countries will only be able to unlock the full value of Wi-Fi 7 if they open up the 6 gigahertz band. And the more that's open, the more value they're unlocking. And so, you know, Broadcom continues to believe that Wi-Fi will be the wireless communication of choice indoors. And it will definitely be needed to complement all of the great use cases that are being developed and envisioned in 5G. So it really takes both.
Well, I believe, as you have said, there's no fight between Wi-Fi, 5G, mobile services, cellular services. There's no fight. The optimum goal for all of us is to achieve sustainable broadband connectivity to the end user, no matter the mean, no matter the location, no matter the time. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Guillaume, I have an interesting question. Actually, I just received from colleagues from the CITC. As you know, many countries and organizations around the globe are considering the compatibility between wireless LAN applications and different services within the 6 gigahertz band. For example, CBT and Ofcom only considered the first part, the first 500 megahertz band, and the people are wondering why Europe or European countries took that decision. And if there is an opportunity in the future that European countries will change their mind and move forward to open the full band, what is your take on that?
So obviously I can't speak for the European administration, but what I can do is give you some insight on why they decided to focus on the lower part of the band initially. And it was really in a situation where Europe was opening the L band to a mobile network back when they decided to start studying the 6 gigahertz band for Wi-Fi. And there's two components to that. The first one is that they had launched a massive program to relocate some of the fixed link that were operating in the L band in the upper 6 gigahertz band. So in the spectrum starting at 6425 and going above. And because of that, they did not want to create uncertainty in the market and have people fearing, oh, they're relocating me there, but then perhaps there's going to be something else happening, and that would be a problem. So that was the first thing. It was a signaling to the people that had their fixed link move from the L band to the upper 6 gigahertz band that there was no problem for them. They would be incumbent in that band and would be protected going forward. That was the first aspect. The second aspect is that they started working on it a while ago, and at that stage, Wi-Fi 6 was still a futuristic thing. Now, as Chris mentioned, it's not futuristic, it's today, and what tomorrow is Wi-Fi 7. And the interesting thing is that the lower part of the band is really good for Wi-Fi 6E, because it allows 3 channels over 160 megahertz. And that's what Chris was saying. That's what you need if you want to have a reliable experience indoor. The problem is that if you're moving to Wi-Fi 7 and 320 megahertz, that's no longer the case. So that lower part of the 6 gigahertz band, we already know is not going to be sufficient to support even the development at the horizon 2025. What decision Europe is going to make in the future, I don't know. That's, of course, up for discussion. But what is sure is that if they want to benefit from Wi-Fi 7, they need to find something else than just the lower 6 gigahertz band.
Totally clear, Guillaume. Thank you so much for the clarification. And I believe, maybe I'm just guessing, that the economy of the scale in the future will drive everybody to allocate this band for license exempt applications, which is, I believe, the right approach to do. While the next question, actually, I would like to ask Hassan. From harmonization point of view, how Intel or chipset manufacturers can accommodate that some countries already opened 500 megahertz and other countries took the right decision and opened the 1200 megahertz for license exempt. How this could be physically accommodated in the equipment, and what will be your advice in general for the regulators to deal with such equipment that could operate on the short version of the frequency band or the full frequency band? How do you see this thing in the future? How the regulators will deal with that?
So first of all, currently the IEEE standard 802.11ax and also 802.11be are provisioning the features and attributes that are needed to accommodate variation in the regulatory requirements, whether those are related to the power level, different modes of operation. We talk about the VLP, LPI, standard power, different modes of operations, and also for the basically channelization. The IEEE standard is provisioning the features that are needed to accommodate those variation in regulatory domain. So that's the case. Like as we know today, like different regulatory requirements are having different modes of operation. They are enabling different power levels and also different, target, portion of the band, in some cases, lower part versus the upper part, versus the entire band. This is being provisioned, but devices can basically, using those provision, can operate in different regions. But from the perspective of marketing, like scaling the products and things like that, minimizing the number of SKUs and bringing down the cost, overhead, of course, it's highly recommended to have a harmonized approach between different regulatory domains. And of course, we discussed the benefits of enabling the entire band for maximally basically achieving the performance performance and services that we expect in 6 gigahertz.
Thank you, Hassan, for this clarification. And actually, we almost will finish on time, maybe earlier a little bit. But I would like to ask Martha 2 questions. Martha, first of all, The first question is, we are talking about spectrum outlook from 2021 to 2023. And within 2 years, this plan will be implemented, will be fully implemented. What do you expect from the CITC then? Do you expect another outlook plan? Do you expect improvements on the plan? What do you think that will happen?
Well, we are seeing now the current consultation about the equipment, and we expect CITC to have to facilitate adoption of the technology. So I think in that case, it's important to see and to keep this conversation, because this is a proof of their doing this. Is keep a conversation with industry stakeholders. In terms of regulations, it would be important also to facilitate regulatory conditions that will be similar to other countries, and that then will benefit from economies of scale. We expect also to see the 3 use cases, and that's what we have seen from the decision that was published 2 days ago. So we expect to see very low power applications, low power indoor applications, and standard power. Within the 3 of them will create a lot of new business cases. You mentioned that, Tamer, in our previous discussion a moment ago. And I think the fact that it's possible now to develop contents in Arabic for many applications like augmented reality for training, that is a great opportunity. And you will be the first country doing so and having the opportunity to try it and to use it and then to export it normally. So we expect to see, so summarizing, we expect to see the 3 use cases. We expect to see alignment in terms of industry proposals and regulations. And we also, it would be highly appreciated if we could have economies of scale, like for final users, following the examples of what has been adopted, like the good decisions in every country. For example, some countries, just to give a short example, some countries for very low power applications like Brazil decided to enable 17 dBm and channels that could be up to 320 megahertz. So they already created the conditions for future adoption. As we were discussing here about bandwidth that will be managed in Wi-Fi 7. And also, I think the case of standard power applications will be important for database management. So it's really exciting. I think that right now you have the opportunity in the kingdom to create a great portfolio of applications and uses.
I will tell you something, Martha. Once the COVID-19 situation is over, most probably I will move to Saudi Arabia. Otherwise, I cannot keep following the rapid and aggressive, progressive developments in Saudi Arabia. Honestly speaking, they are doing well, and I believe they will keep this spirit up and high. Actually, I have another question. And I would like to hear from you about this. We all agree that Saudi Arabia took the, I would say, the right decision, and they have established a balanced approach to allocate spectrum between different services, including IMT, satellite, lossless eximent applications, and so on and so forth. For the jurisdictions or countries who are still thinking about the matter or still not have no decision about how to tackle the issue, what is the risks? What are the risks that these jurisdictions or countries will face in the future if they left behind? And what are the challenges, let's say, that they will face if they join too late?
Yeah, I think every administration has the choice. Do they want to be pioneers? Do they want to be leaders on adopting technology? Or do they want just to be followers and do what others are doing? I think that is a choice, and that is the first thing. From the economic perspective, and we consider that for some countries where we had studies, we know that there is an opportunity cost in adopting the technology too late, or just waiting for that. I was mentioning the case of Brazil. And in that case, we consider like, okay, if they adopt unlicensed access framework for the 6 gigahertz band in 2024, that would mean an impact of $17 billion in their economy. Because in the case of Wi-Fi, you have economic benefits since the beginning. You can start having applications, usage of the equipment, for example, local market for augmented reality, virtual reality applications. And that is since the first moment, since the regulations are enabled. So I would say countries that if they have a way to manage a balance, a good trade-off between different types of access, like exclusive license access, unlicensed or license exempt, and lightly licensed, that is the ideal approach. You always hear from industry, we need a good balance. We need spectrum in low band, mid band, high band, and unlicensed. That's also part of the ecosystem. And if you can do it and you think that it's possible to move forward, please do it quickly. Otherwise, you will be just adopting technology in the future and you will miss many use cases. I think it was also clear here that Wi-Fi 7 will consider 320 megahertz bandwidth channels. And you know the great opportunities that you get in terms of latency and throughput if you have larger channels. So that will create also a set of applications and use cases that will be very important.
Perfect. Thank you, Martha. Actually, we still have 4 minutes, so quickly, I'll give you the floor, Martha, first. I would like to hear your final remarks. Martha, Chris, Guillaume, and Hassan. So Martha, please give me your final remarks on this great event that we were part of it today.
Well, thank you. I would like to thank CITC and you, Tamer, and everyone that organized this event. I think it's a great opportunity to show the cooperation, the collaboration with industry. From the DSA perspective, we felt that it has been a great process. We had 2 consultations. We had the opportunity to provide comments, to showcase what industry is providing. So I would really like to congratulate you on this decision. And I'm sure that if we see the results in 2 years, you will see all the benefits, all the good aspects of this decision.
Thank you, Martha. Chris?
Yeah, I would also like to echo Martha in thanking CITC for putting this together and taking into account industry input. Providing us with an opportunity to let CITC know what it's going to take to see this technology proliferate in Saudi Arabia and in the region. And now I believe that Saudi Arabia has a chance to impact what will be potentially the hero class of product proliferating in 2021, 2022, and 2023. So it's very exciting times.
Thank you, Chris. Hassan?
Yes, again, on my side, I also would like to thank CITC for invitation and also congratulate them for the decision. We are very excited and for Saudi Arabia for the decision as well as the region. And we are looking forward to working on the detailed consultation and the next steps. Thanks.
Thank you, Hassan. And finally, Guillaume.
Thank you, Tamer. Yeah, I just want to thank in what Martha, Chris, and Hassan just said. It's a very exciting time. What we do believe is that opening the full 1200 megahertz to unlicensed device will really give opportunity to people to just innovate, create more values in their life, not just people, but all economic actors in Saudi Arabia. So I think it's indeed a very exciting time. We will be there to help and do our part in trying to make this bright future appear. And thank you to everyone for this opportunity.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, everybody. I would like also to thank CITC, but allow me to speak right now in Arabic. أتوجه بالشكر هيئة الاتصالات. أتوجه بالشكر لجميع العاملين بهيئة الاتصالات ممثلة بالمحافظ وكافة العاملين، الجهاز التنفيذي، الأخوة في الترددات، على شغلهم، على مجهودهم، وعلى تميزهم بصراحة. يعني ضربت المثل، رفعت الرأس، والله يعطيكم العافية وشكرا جزيلا، وإن شاء الله نراكم على خير. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Okay, welcome everyone to the last but definitely not least part of this event. We have quite the panel lined up for you today. We have speakers from the Wireless Broadband Alliance, the Wi-Fi Alliance, Microsoft, HPE, and Apple. I would like to welcome Bruno Thomas, our first speaker in this panel. Bruno, good to see you.
Yeah, so good to see you after such a long week planning for all this showcase. But yeah, thank you so much, first of all, for the invitation to CITC and allowing us to work with you and the industry partners on this enablement. I would like just to greet my fellow panelists. I see, of course, our sister organization, Wi-Fi Alliance, and some of the common members joining, which is great. For this welcome presentation, I would like just to share a bit on the work we did with CITC and really, go practical. So our mission here in the WBA is, of course, after all the successes from these organizations and regulators launching the full 6 GHz band, how we make it a reality in the short time frame possible. So we have a priority program that we call these Wi-Fi 6 and 6E deployment trials, where we are looking to show the readiness and create confidence to accelerate the adoption. Question number one is their equipment. Will it work? How easy it is to deploy if I do this market decision now? People want to see also the business and service requirements in a real world environment. So we need decision makers also to come and look into the, let's say, the trial results that are coming from the field. We need to have multiple players, not only the enterprises, but also other actors that will eventually leverage these networks. And finally, we try to create this neutral environment to share learnings and address end-to-end challenges that in every standard we need to correct, and on the next generation also keep improving, as it was discussed today. So roughly we have 70 organizations that are, let's say, the end customers, the carriers, the enterprises, the cities, the governments, and then 25% are technology providers and vendors. The good news is that along with the CITC in Saudi Arabia that released the full band, all over the world there are trials starting. So some of these regions even didn't, let's say, release the band yet, but there are licenses that they can get to perform some early testing. And then you can see 2 examples across all the continents, across verticals for entertainment, transportation, residential, industrial, smart villages, smart cities. So yeah, we are really trying to have this one-stop shop coordination and reporting across different use cases. But yeah, so with this introductory note, shifting gears to Saudi Arabia and what we did with CITC. So we started this joint project, as I mentioned, roughly 2 months ago. I was very impressed with the enthusiasm and the drive from all the project participants from CITC and local partners, that they really wanted to take this forward. And I'm very, hopeful that other regions do the same and have the same drive. But really, this was this vision of having eventually a multi-vendor ecosystem starting to deploy Wi-Fi 6 and 6E. CITC did the first step with the trial kit that you saw in the early presentation from Broadcom and Intel, and also so the more robust and holistic these Wi-Fi deployments are, the more likely it will be used for advanced use cases and also play a role within the 5G context. So we want everyone, both from inside the kingdom and coming from the outside, eventually to have a seamless, secure experience when coming in rich in one of these new networks that are being deployed. And further, I think really the success story that we are bringing here to you today, I believe that for the topic of this panel, that is digitizing Saudi Arabia, combining Wi-Fi 6E and open roaming will really help with local economy growth. So all this adoption of new policies, enhanced security mechanisms, democratizing the access to any provider that is having a specific type of business model, being free, being settled. We should really have all these players being able to benefit from this innovation. So phase one, you saw it this morning. So we started with the CITC lab here. So the phase one was achieved. We proved the bandwidth, the throughput, and really what we are now planning to do for the phase two, it's to go live. We would like to include both pre-commercial and commercial equipment. Soon the vendor OEMs will start announcing equipment, and working with CITC, we would like to go to the field, find a location within Riyadh or other location in the kingdom where we could have a live showcase and then also add open roaming into the mix. Further, I could just also leave a note in terms of, in our perspective, what will be the impacts. So I think with Wi-Fi 6E, we have this unprecedented toolkit for the industry to leverage. Of course, the kingdom has very advanced industries, so there is a lot of factories, these industrial IoT environments that become even more challenging. And our experience from a couple examples, such as a project that we have with Metis Aerospace, they tried previous generations of Wi-Fi within the existing spectrum. And the reality is they could not get Wi-Fi 4, Wi-Fi 5 working on the 2.4 and the 5. So by introducing the new band and Wi-Fi 6E for the first time, they were able to meet their use cases. And these are environments that are not common enterprise. So they have lots of moving metal, fume, very remote locations, lots of industrial IoT devices that need to be monitored and that are by nature physical devices with no type of interface, right? So this was really something relevant to them. And by making this move, we believe that there is this democratization of factories all over the kingdom being able to move forward and do a leap in terms of supporting advanced IoT mechanisms. And finally, I think this is, again, one step closer to achieve this concept of one global network. So the more the large spectrum of companies can access some type of connectivity, especially in pandemic situation, this Wi-Fi 6E combined, again, with open roaming could create a scalability for everyone to take a role and really remove barriers for entry. But yeah, so I think in these initial 5 minutes welcome, I just want to say that we welcome everyone to join our trials program. So there is a Wi-Fi 6 hub here where you can see the latest progress, the latest announcements. If you are a partner also working in the kingdom or in the region and you would like to get involved, either get your network part of these trials and work with the vendor OEM that can provide you some prototype equipment. We are able to make those bridges. And on the other end, if you own, let's say, user identities, because you are an operator, you provide premium value-added services, and you want to have your users benefiting from these innovations, yeah, by any means, please contact us, and we'll make sure that we address it within the project team, and eventually you also have your success story to add here into the mix. But yes, so with this, Mr. Hamed, I will hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Without further ado, I'd like to move on to Alex from the Wi-Fi Alliance. Alex, thanks for joining us. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Ahmed, and thank you, CICT, for the invitation to participate in this webinar and for the privilege to share some thoughts with you. So I'm going to share my screen, but can you see my screen? You can.
Not yet.
I see.
We saw an ostrich, and now we see your presentation. We see it. You're good.
Okay, hold on, let me...
Alex, we see your presentation now.
Okay, so if you can see my screen, that's great. So with that, no, sorry about that. That's not part of my presentation.
It's not the worst picture to see. I've seen far worse.
Okay, I think we can move forward. Okay, so I wanted to take this opportunity to also congratulate CITC on releasing the spectrum outlook. I think this decision is going to be transformative, not just for the kingdom and the way the spectrum provides benefits for the citizens of Saudi Arabia, but also for the entire region. And since we're here to speak on 6 gigahertz, I wanted to provide a quote from the outlook, which I think explains exactly why there is the need for this decision. And so I'm quoting from page 51 of the Spectrum Outlook, where CITC outlined the reasons for making the 6 gigahertz available. And there are two primary reasons. I couldn't list all the reasons that were provided in the decision, but the first reason I think would cover the points that I want to make, which is there's absolutely the need for additional spectrum capacity, which was highlighted particularly during the COVID pandemic. And there is a need to enable a wider range of digital connectivity and devices that could be provided in this spectrum. And so I will focus in my opening remarks on those points. So first, the Wi-Fi's role in mitigating the COVID pandemic. Of course, we're still in a COVID pandemic, and the statistics are hard to come by because it's hard to believe, but it's only been a year since the pandemic started. So the statistics are usually lag by about a year, but we're seeing a number of studies from various parts of the world that indicate that there is a significant increase in the use of Wi-Fi. And so one of the studies that I listed here is from Ofcom, which is the UK regulator, that indicates that there is a significant demand for Wi-Fi, and which continues to increase during the lockdown. And then the AirTie study, also it's about a year old, but as you can see, it's showing that there is an increase in active Wi-Fi devices, increase in simultaneous devices connected, number of work hours, Wi-Fi data consumption, volume of traffic over Wi-Fi. And what's more importantly, there is the performance degradation is being experienced by users. And this performance degradation comes from the fact that there is simply not enough spectrum capacity when everyone is getting online for video upload or for downloading entertainment or for accessing work or whatever. The spectrum capacity is simply not there to support all these capabilities. And of course, Wi-Fi, as we can see, has playing a critical role in mitigating the impact of the COVID pandemic. And then that is bearing out by some of the other statistics that we're seeing. So here's the increase in global Wi-Fi traffic from 2019 to April 2020, again, just when the pandemic started. And as you can see, there is an over 80% increase. At least that's the statistic that's available now, but I'm sure that line can be extrapolated and the graph continues to increase in the traffic of Wi-Fi. And then Wi-Fi daily activity. So these are the busy hours across the 24-hour period. As you can see, the number of busy hours for Wi-Fi has gone up significantly and remains so. And if this is the new normal, the decision that CITC made is going to be significant in addressing this need for Wi-Fi connectivity. We also looked at Wi-Fi economic value. Many of you know we have released an economic study back in 2018, and now we just updated it, released it last month. What's interesting is that our projections back in 2018 actually underestimated the value of Wi-Fi. The value of Wi-Fi is projected to increase to almost $5 trillion on a global basis. But it's 150% more than what was estimated back in 2018. And I also wanted to highlight the value of Wi-Fi 6 and 6E technologies. These technologies just recently been introduced, as many speakers have mentioned. So, but in 2021 alone, the global value of Wi-Fi 6 and 6E will be 58 billion, but it will go up almost 9 times by 2025. So again, a significant economic value. And that's why we can see that Wi-Fi is definitely an economic driver for many countries. And here are the economic drivers that were identified in our economic study. Residential Wi-Fi is the significant portion of that. The users and businesses and everyone are deriving significant value of having this connectivity throughout their residence. So residential Wi-Fi is high. Enterprise Wi-Fi with businesses benefiting. You know, we are all working from home now. So having this connectivity is critically important. Also manufacturing, offload of cellular services to Wi-Fi and ISP provisions, and of course free Wi-Fi. All these are important economic components. So let's just take a quick look at Wi-Fi ecosystem. I know I followed the discussion from earlier today, and it was a very interesting discussion. But just to highlight how Wi-Fi 6 and 6E fit with the 5G services. So the Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E is primarily an indoor technology that will deliver connectivity when it is available, when the user is within the coverage area of Wi-Fi. When the coverage is not available, for example, while driving, it may be challenging to get Wi-Fi connectivity, and then 5G comes in. But these technologies are complementary. So when countries focus on either 5G or either on Wi-Fi, that is certainly not a comprehensive approach. The comprehensive approach is to balance out these technologies because both are critically needed, and as shown on this slide here. And I will not spend a whole lot of time on this slide. I know previous speakers have covered it, but the significant benefits are being derived from deployment of Wi-Fi 6 technologies with the capabilities. I encourage you to take a look at Wi-Fi Alliance Wi-Fi 6 certified program, and it provides additional information, and also we have some video on Wi-Fi 6E. Just to give you a perspective on how the devices are deploying, so we are seeing a significant uptake in adoption of Wi-Fi 6E devices. Just this year alone is projected that 338 million devices, Wi-Fi 6E devices, will be shipped just in 2021. And remember that we just started the certification program in January of 2021. So by 2024, there will be over 1 billion devices, Wi-Fi 6E devices, shipped every year. And we're seeing that with announcements from a number of companies on the equipment, on the chip side, and on the routers and PCs, the phones, and we're expecting the Wi-Fi 6E integration into every device that is going to be Wi-Fi enabled, or many of those. And lastly, I just wanted to provide a quick overview on the spectrum access. So this is the decision that was made by Europe so far on the 500 megahertz. That's an approach that allows for 160 megahertz channels. But what we need to keep in mind, that one channel is certainly not enough. 3 channels is a minimum for acceptable performance. More channels are needed because Wi-Fi is a dynamic random access technology that's based on convention-based protocol. And with users using more and more devices, the statistics are that there are from 8 to 12 devices per user now, and in the future it will increase. And then keeping in mind The future is 802.11be, which is based on 320 megahertz channels. So that's why the decision by CITC is so important, is that it's not just for today, it's for the future as well. Because in the future, having one 320 megahertz channel is simply not going to work. It is not sufficient to support the capabilities. The 320 megahertz channels will make a difference. So with that, I thank you, and hopefully I didn't take too much time.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Scott from Microsoft. Scott, thank you for joining us, and please unmute yourself.
Oh, triple muted here. Thanks so much, Ahmed, and thank you, CITC, for this opportunity to speak today. And I won't show my slides because about 90% of it would be retreads of all the fabulous stuff that's already been said today. But my name is Scott Blue. I'm in charge of global spectrum policy for Microsoft. And I'll say up front, I'm just super impressed with the spectrum outlook. I'm also responsible for our 5G spectrum policy and other spectrum aspects. And as one of my colleagues said yesterday, he wondered if I had written the document because it's so totally in line with what Microsoft would like to see. And so we're looking forward to working closely with in Saudi Arabia as we already do. So I guess first thing is the global harmonization for this 1200 megahertz of spectrum is so terribly important, and to go out there and stake the claim and do this in Region 1 to show what is possible, and as Alex has just said, the 320 megahertz channels that will be available in the future really allows developers and device manufacturers to know that there will be a global footprint. If you can imagine the folks that are making peripherals for Xbox, for instance, you don't want to have gamers have different experiences in different countries and different regions, or maybe you'll want to move to Saudi Arabia so that you can have a better gaming experience and beat the kids that are playing in Europe. But I really hope that this opens the eyes to say just how important it is for global harmonization, and that it can be done. It can be done in Region 1 at the same time as making enough spectrum available for 5G. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about application space and where we are and what we're seeing from the hyperscale cloud providers' perspective. Back in 2007, I ran the test methodology drafting group for IMT Advanced, which is the technology group at the ITU that gave us LTE and WiMAX. And kind of off the top of people's heads, we came up with this idea that in the future, where we're supposed to be now, that great amounts of data would stream to computers somewhere else, and decisions would be made, and then decisions would go back to the devices. In the same year, I also was involved in helping finalize the 802.11p standard in the IEEE, which was the original ITS standard. And the same idea was there, that massive amounts of data from cars was going to flow into the network, and the network was going to make real-time decisions. When we come forward to today, what we see in the trends from how the cloud is being used is that autonomous driving is actually becoming autonomous, that very little data is actually going back and forth to the cloud in order for the cars to make decisions. But what is happening is massive amounts of data are needed to facilitate the cars themselves moving around. You stop at a charging station in the future with your electric vehicle. All of the maps in the local environment will be updated for how the roads work there. And for most of the time, you're driving around and the car's operating by itself. And at the same time, we've also seen a huge advancement in what we can do with video processing. So another, autonomous vehicle need back in the day was for stoplights to send messages to cars to tell them about what was going on at an intersection. Whereas where I live in the north of Finland right now, If there's a car that looks like it might be running a red light, the red lights will come on for the other direction and stop the cars. So, the intelligence is on the actual edge devices themselves, which goes forward to a product that Microsoft has just announced. We have a multimedia prototyping platform for what's called low-code, no-code AI development. Microsoft Precept is a platform that has cameras and microphones that can be set up on a factory floor, for instance. And one of the very first applications was in a factory that had been modified to produce masks for the COVID epidemic. And it was looking at the quality of the masks as they came out of a machine that was developed for something else. And the way the application works is there's a camera with a processor next to it that takes a whole bunch of samples of what a good mask looks like. And then that massive amount of data from those samples are sent to the cloud. And the cloud works away and comes up with an AI that is then shipped back to the camera. And so when there is an identification of some kind of problem or a change that happens because there's new material being used in the mask, then an alert is sent to a system to make a change. It's very different from the original idea that, in the future, we were going to be streaming lots and lots of video and in some kind of real-time process that the quality measurements were going to be made. And so really it shows this idea that, having these large channels to be able to move data quickly so that, the work can be done somewhere else and then sent back to the devices themselves is really what we see both in automobiles, on the factory floor, in robots that are developing, and in fact in HoloLens. From the AR perspective, we have the same kind of thing where the best way to avoid people getting nauseous from AR and VR is to have the processing happen in the headset itself. And so it's very much more like a video game model where you have 4 or 5 gigabits of information that needs to get to that headset as quickly as possible. And the actual information that needs to go back and forth to the network is not so important. So that's exactly, is benefit. It goes full circle here to the really important work that will come out of Wi-Fi 6E, where these applications need to be attached to many, many devices, and they need to be able to burst I'm getting cut off. Need to be able to burst information quickly.
No, we're still going to have more to talk about, and I want to come back to gaming as soon as we start the Q&A. Dita from HPE is up next.
Thank you, Ahmed. Yes, good afternoon to everybody, or good morning. Let me just try to share.
It would be great if you could stick to 5 minutes, if possible.
Yes, absolutely. I'll try my very best. Let me just share my screen because unlike Scott, I have a few slides. Let's see how this...
Are you going to show us some animals as well?
How well this works. Okay. Right, I want to actually... sorry, it doesn't seem to be able to select my PowerPoint here. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Hello, I cannot hear anything anymore.
Yes, we can see it.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me and can you see my screen?
We can see it, perfect.
Okay, thank you, because I wasn't sure. Okay, right. Let's move on. Okay. Well, first of all, again, also from Hewlett Packard Enterprise, a big thank you to CITC for inviting us to this webinar, this panel session, and to provide us with the opportunity to provide our views on this groundbreaking decision to open the entire 1200 megahertz for license exempt use and for Wi-Fi. This is absolutely fantastic. Allow me to spend just a few words on HPE, because some people still believe we do printers and personal computers, which we do not. Actually, we are a relatively big enterprise equipment and solutions provider, and the number 2 in wireless enterprise networks, and we are catering for a large number of markets, from hospitality, transportation, large public venues, enterprise, and so on. Manufacturing is also an important segment here, and our wireless solutions are based on Wi-Fi, which is why we are so excited about the CITC's decision. Now, if I go to the next screen, we are absolutely convinced that the decision of CITC to open the entire band is really, it provides a winning combination. You have all the spectrum to really exploit the features and the capabilities of Wi-Fi 6 and future Wi-Fi 7. We heard about that in more detail earlier today. Well, the Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7 have, of course, a number of features which differentiate them from earlier generations of Wi-Fi. And these are also very important, let's say, for the industrial market and the industrial segment there, which is what I would like to talk about in slightly more detail. Now, Wi-Fi has a couple of inherent advantages, like being easy to deploy and can be managed in-house. Users have, or organizations have, full control over the infrastructure and their data. So these are particularly important for the industrial environment. And so far, and I believe it was Hassan from Intel who mentioned that, so far Wi-Fi has been mostly used in the residential and I would say enterprise office environment. But we see Wi-Fi moving more into the really industrial domain. There are forecasts that the value of the industrial Wi-Fi infrastructure will grow at almost 17% per year until 2030. So there's quite a big potential. And that Wi-Fi is going to be used again in factories, warehouses, plants, manufacturing, and so on. Lots of different industrial applications. And it's increasingly used and seen as alternative to cellular solutions. So in Wi-Fi, of course, looking at the underlying 802.11 technology, is, let's say, providing a one-stop solution and covering most, if not all, connectivity requirements here. So if I go to a, let's say, more concrete example here, looking, for instance, at, and I believe this is of certain interest for the kingdom, as it holds 17% of the world's oil reserves, oil exploration, extraction, and processing. So the oil and gas industry is undergoing a digital transformation like many other industries. And there are a variety of areas which require wireless instant connectivity, reliable connectivity. The industrial Internet of Things is a typical example here, with massive data collection from sensors, monitoring, asset tracking. Then there's surveillance and inspection tasks conducted, for instance, by robots and drones, also maintenance and autonomous material handling. Then in the back end, if you want, is then, of course, the analytics, the AI, and the cloud computing to process all that data. Another important application, which was also mentioned a couple of times earlier, is AR/VR, which is used, among other things, for training and remote collaboration. So all these different applications also very different requirements in terms of bitrate and latency, but they can all be served through Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7. Another example here that I looked at is, for instance, smart ports. I mean, the kingdom has some of the biggest business ports in the Middle East, North Africa region. So this is certainly an area where Wi-Fi 6E could be used for a number of applications and tasks. Some I mentioned already in the previous slide, but then, of course, you have the operation of cranes and AGVs, containers, everything that you have in smart ports, infrastructure, cargo handling, intermodal traffic, etc., etc., could all benefit very much from having reliable wireless connectivity and having that large amount of spectrum available with Wi-Fi 6E. Okay, so I rushed a bit to make sure we maintain the time. Just finally that the Packet Enterprise will, of course, during the course of the year, roll out network solutions based on Wi-Fi 6E, which will also support the entire 1200 megahertz. Thank you very much. I'm at the end of my presentation, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And we're going to be back to you in 5 minutes, presumably, if my friend Graham from Apple sticks to his 5 minutes. Graham, you with me? Graham?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Thank you for joining us. Graham sadly won't confirm or deny any rumors about any future Apple products. But if you're going to talk to us about any potential AR or VR applications, then we will be happy to stick around till midnight. But if that's not the case, then let's stick to 5 minutes and then we'll be back.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name's Graham McDonald. I work for Apple. I think it's fairly clear it's very difficult for Apple to speak about any future roadmaps. So I'll not be touching on any of those issues at all. From a spectrum perspective, though, I really would like to thank you for your initiative in opening up the full 6 gigahertz. For Wi-Fi and technology-neutral license-exempt applications. I think it's exceptionally beneficial. You're showing significant leadership in the whole of the I2R Region 1, if not globally. So we as Apple are exceedingly pleased that this is actually occurring. I think that will pay dividends as well, obviously, as we move towards the World Radio Conference. I think people do need to realize that license-exempt spectrum has been sorely lacking for a long time now. It's been very difficult for the World Radio Conference is to progress any new spectrum for license-exempt use. And of course, there are, as mentioned, I really don't know what I could say very much because all of the speakers today have covered all of the points that I would have made had I been earlier on the agenda. I'm just pleased to have this opportunity. I think it's suffice to say that the current regulations from an Apple perspective, if you look at the European regulations anyway, for low power and very low power applications meet our requirements at the moment. We are aware, of course, that standard power or higher power outdoor use is still something that CPT didn't consider or wasn't able to consider in the first development of the regulations, but probably is something we need to look at going forward. But I think now, with your opportunity to look at higher powers and different ways in which that could be achieved, would be exceptionally useful. I also wanted to state that obviously, and I don't think anybody mentioned this, if they did I missed it and I do apologize, but from a standardization perspective, the ETSI standard EN 303687 is being progressed. It's reached a stable draft, and of course we welcome further inputs on that ETSI standard itself, and certainly from an Apple perspective, that will be the standard that we will be declaring compliance against the EN 303687. I know there's some reference to the short-range device standard, I think it's 300, 440, and that might be useful in the interim period. So I think all of the applications and services that others have mentioned are exceptionally useful, and Wi-Fi 6E will play a significant part in ensuring that they are successful. So I think maybe with that, I'm more than happy to take questions on the panel, but I don't think there's much more that I can really say from an Apple perspective, apart from congratulations again for taking this initiative and opening up the spectrum for license use. Thank you.
To my personally fun part of this panel, I used to love doing last sessions on workshops or conferences because, you know, you could go off script, people relaxed, you could intentionally or unintentionally reference the crazy stuff that happened the night before at the banquet. But now we're on YouTube, so anything we say is going to haunt us for the rest of our lives. So I'm going to try to stay out of trouble. Can I see my panelists, please? So I'm going to try to stay out of trouble, but that doesn't mean that I can't try to get you into trouble. And that's exactly what I'm going to try to do with my first question. So we don't have a lot of time. Brief answers of 30 seconds will suffice for the first question, and I would actually like an input from every single one of you, and we're going to go through the order that you spoke with. So the first question is, I mean, you've all acknowledged that this is a breakthrough decision for Saudi Arabia, making the entire 6 gigahertz band unlicensed. It's the first time, the first nation in ITU Region 1, which has Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Europe more or less has went in its direction, as we all know from the recent developments. But to what extent do you think Saudi Arabia's decision is going to tip the scale for the rest of the MENA region? That's something that I would like to, poke your thoughts on. Do you think that we're going to pave the way for the rest of the region to follow our lead? Do you think it's just, a decision that may not impact the rest of the region? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And I'll start with Bruno. In 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, sure. I can say that from our practical, real-world type deployment experience, we always need the benchmark. So yeah, clearly for the region, we were trying to find this benchmark, and I'm glad that you moved forward. So I believe that now talking with regions, as you mentioned, Region 1 especially, we need more venues, we need more cases showing really the advancements that you just did. So I'm really hopeful that this can drive, painting the EMEA map like the North America and South America one very, very soon.
Okay,
thanks.
Alex?
Yes, thanks, Ahmad. So I wouldn't foreclose on Europe just yet. I think that they're taking a staged approach. So obviously the first stage was making the 500 megahertz available for Wi-Fi 6E. But I would not say that they have given up on considering the upper portion. And we are certainly advocating to the European regulators to expand this decision. I think every nation, not just in Region 1, but around the world, is looking to maintain leadership in this wireless connectivity. It's critical for the economy. It's critical for the social services. And so countries in developing as well as developed world are looking to make spectrum available, which is needed as evidenced by the studies we have done.
There are so many political jokes that I can make right now, but I'm sadly not going to be able to do because this is recorded. Okay, so Alex still has some hope for Europe. That is really interesting for me. Let's hope someone quotes you on this on the internet in a few hours. Scott.
I have hope for Europe as well. Obviously, the brakes were pumped in Region 1 with having the top of the band being studied for IMT through WRC 23. But those of us that were there know that that's because there are a number of countries that weren't going to be able to make the 3.5 band available. And so that countries that are, there's no reason not to adopt what's now prevalent around the world, which is the 1200 megahertz. So, just that simply, there are going to be products that are available that are going to work better if you make the whole band available. And with people locked inside for the pandemic, you're going to want to use these cool new devices. So I hope other countries will follow suit. Thanks.
Okay, Detlef?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, it's remarkable that two Americans still express their faith in Europe. And now, as a European, I'm happy to do the same. So I believe that the decision by the CITC is really very closely watched everywhere. And I'm absolutely convinced it will have a positive impact not only in the Middle East Africa region, but also in Europe. I mean, we know that there is support among quite a number of administrations for license-exempt allocations to the upper 6 gigahertz band. And I believe that this decision of Saudi Arabia to open this band will have a very positive impact. Thank you.
Okay, I'm loving the optimism. Graham?
Yes, well, as an ex-European, because I live in the UK, I still have some hope.
For the UK, do you think the UK will go all the way?
I think the UK would be considering it. And I think it boils down to the timescales associated with Agenda Item 1.2 in the World Radio Conference. And of course, I personally don't think there'll be many administrations moving forward in Europe until that's decided. But I would like to think that they wouldn't see a need for an IMT identification in the upper 6 gigahertz. There's already a co-primary mobile allocation there. And And frequencies in the lower sort of C-band are much more useful and harmonized for potential IMT. And of course, there is a recognized lack of additional spectrum for license-exempt use, which has been over a number of WRCs now. So I'm still very confident that CBP will, shall we say, do the right thing and provide the balance necessary for licensed and license-exempt. And of course, I think, as Guillaume mentioned previously, it was a staged approach because initially the European Commission mandate did cover the full 6 gigahertz range. But it was decided to reduce it just the lower 6 gigahertz for, I think, reasons that Scott mentioned on fixed links being reallocated. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Thank you.
Okay, and as diplomatic as ever, Graham. Okay, now it's a yes/no question without elaboration. So if I'm not wrong, this is the first major Wi-Fi band expansion, maybe 20 years or so, if we're going to go by history. I mean, you have to go into technicalities. But do you see any major future Wi-Fi band expansion happening over the next 5 years or so, aside from the 6 gigahertz? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, specify the band, no elaboration. Bruno. I can't hear you. Unmute yourself, and you're only allowed to say yes or no, no elaboration.
Yes. No, I believe it's yes, and I think locally licensed may have a role to play with some innovation on the Wi-Fi radios.
So which band?
Yeah, I think it will be lower bands, so between the 2.4 and the 6, especially in Europe and regions around that location.
Okay, Alex?
Qualified, yes, and there are possibilities in the TV white spaces, for example, as the Region 1 repurposes the UHF bands. There may be some spectrum there where that could be used.
Okay, Scott?
Yes.
Which band?
And the qualified, I agree with Alex that for countries that only make 500 megahertz available, that you're going to have to find something else for IoT, whether that's in the C-band or whether it's UHF.
Okay, Detlef?
Yes, but to be honest, I'm not 100% sure where it's going to happen. So I would say also more on the licensing side, probably in the mid-band somewhere, but without being more precise. Thank you.
Okay, Graham.
Yeah, I would say yes, but for different reasons. I think there's opportunities in the future for frequencies much higher up, but that's not a replacement for mid-band license-exempt spectrum.
Okay, and now the more tricky question. With this decision, do you think Saudi Arabia is set for the next 5 years when it comes to addressing Wi-Fi uses or applications, or should we look at other bands? Again, yes or no, and specify the band, no elaboration. Bruno. Unmute yourself, please.
Yes, so based on, this phase 2 project we have, I would say no. So let's make this huge, big, and Saudi Arabia leading deployments and cover all the country. Thank you.
Okay, Alex?
Well, I would say that there is always room for improvement, and IoT is one area. Again, with UHF band being available, that's a possibility. But of course, this decision is transformative for Wi-Fi industry in Saudi Arabia.
Scott?
Yeah, I'll just echo exactly what Alex just said.
Okay. Detlef?
Well, to be honest, I would say after this allocation, within a 5 years time frame, I believe there's plenty of things to do. So I would believe that extensions would probably come after that.
Okay, Graham.
Yeah, very simple. We'll just support the Wi-Fi Alliance position in this. Thanks.
Okay, you see, that's the thing. Whenever you're on any spectrum panel, if you're going to ask anyone if they need more spectrum, the answer is always going to be yes, no matter what. Anyways, so the next question will be about AR and VR, and I'm going to go specifically to Scott, since you guys have the HoloLens. So how much of an impact do you think this is going to have on future HoloLens products?
Well, I think the architecture itself, it'll allow for some neat things to be done. And as I was trying to explain before, this whole idea of being able to have a whole video game's worth of information come blasting into a device, allows for real-time updates for the VR experience in something that's very different from from what we've seen so far. So I think that you're going to see both because the battery life and the processing power that's happened over the last 5 years that allows stuff to happen in the HoloLens itself in future generations, plus this ability to move large amounts of data around, especially when you get to the 320 megahertz channels at a time. You're going to see things that you haven't imagined to this point.
Okay, last question, and again, one word, and I'm sorry, but we got squeezed on time. One application, just pick it, which is your choice for the application that Saudi consumers are gonna first get to enjoy. The first thing that is where Saudi consumers are gonna see the difference once we start shipping Wi-Fi 6E devices and applications this year. Just one application. Bruno, what's the first impact? How are people gonna fall in love with Wi-Fi 6E? Pick one.
Yeah, it has to be the nice cloud gaming for me.
Okay, Alex?
4K video.
Okay, Scott?
I think it'll be industrial automation applications.
I want you to disagree with Alex on one thing before we close. Pick something different.
The first thing you're going to notice on is the phones. They're already there, and it's noticeable when you have one in your hand.
Okay, Detlef?
Well, as we're not in the consumer business, I cannot really comment, so I would just go for industrial automation as well.
Graham?
I would suggest personally anything that requires ultra low latency.
Any specific examples for the non-technical audience?
No, I'm not able to comment on that.
Okay, so he's referencing something there. We're going to come back to this video in a few months when something's announced and we'll say, ha, he mentioned it. I'm just joking. Okay, I would love to keep this rolling for another 30 minutes, but in the interest of time, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us. Absolute pleasure to have you. It's amazing that I think almost most, if not all of us, are connected through Wi-Fi to make this happen right now, which is pretty amazing. And we look forward to having you at future events. We still have more work to do with Wi-Fi, one more consultation to go. We're going to be counting on your participation to bring this home. Thank you very much. Stay safe and well. Enjoy the rest of your days.